Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to the Anime Fictions 2.0. Today, we're diving into part 2 of What If Naruto created over 1,000 shadow clones and cheated the Ninja Academy? If you're enjoying these alternate timelines, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and check out the other videos on the channel. And of course, drop your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing your ideas. Alright, enough talk, let's get into the story. Prank Day 3. Summoning Technique. Naruto called out, slamming his hand into the ground. For the third time tonight, smoke came out at this call, in this instance much more than before. When it dispersed, Naruto was standing there, arms crossed. See, I told you weren't using enough, Ichigo added. How's it going, Kage? The usual. And you? The rabbit boss said, passing the time while Naruto recovered. The boy currently was inhaling in great gulps, sweat shining on his brow. Great. There's so much new stuff here I can't even know where to start. It beats the prank wars with Raibo any day. Good. I'll summon you for a meeting sometime next week, he said, smiling, then bent towards Naruto. You gonna be okay, partner? It took a few seconds for the student to answer. Hopefully it won't take this much each time. It had actually tired him more than when he mass summoned clones when training towards chakra draining. He finally straightened back up. The plan's working, so pretty good, partner. He extended his hand. They shook, smiling. So you're gonna bring me up to speed on this prank of yours? Yup, Naruto answered. It all started less than a month ago, actually. It was the final exam at the academy, and I passed the whole morning training and summoning. That's pretty much it. Naruto finished, stretching on his chair. Naruto nodded, thinking. Calling it a prank wasn't descriptive enough, even though that was certainly part of it. It was prank, long-term infiltration, revenge and legal manipulation all at the same time. It had managed to make him laugh quite a few times, especially the various retaliations to Naruto's maths teacher, but the goal of this wasn't simple laughter. It was much more. He didn't need to do anything about it. It seemed that the newest member of his court had things well in hand, anyway. So, then, he would help where he could. And how are going your own studies? The rabbit asked. Good enough. Naruto shrugged. Right now I'm working on modifying the Kage Bunshin to be used only for communication, but progress is slow. Not much outside of that. That's not enough, the summon said. A few hand signs later, Miyamoto appeared in a burst of smoke. The smaller rabbit bowed at its leader right as he appeared. I come as summoned. What is your bidding, Shogun? He asked instantly. Miyamoto, Naruto said, in an official tone. Is it true you haven't yet found someone to teach you techniques? Yes. I'm sure you remember the newest member of our clan. Would you be able to teach him? Well, Miyamoto answered, visibly deep in thought. He has the necessary frame, which is something most rabbits lack. And he has proven he can learn, so I do not see why not. Naruto, the rabbit leader said, cutting towards the boy who had stayed silent during the latest exchange. The rabbit clan is all about both teaching and learning. One learns the techniques of the clan, and uses these to discover new techniques or modify old ones. Then he or she teaches those to the clan, and the circle goes on. Right. Miyamoto here hasn't found anybody that was both able and willing to learn the sword from him. Would you do him the honor of being his student? Naruto thought for a moment. He'd already worked with Miyamoto, and he'd found the rabbit strict but respectful, something which wasn't a problem. However, that would be cutting into his training time, and he had quite a few ideas he wanted to try out. In the end, however, one point came above the others. Swords were cool, and he'd be cooler using one. Sure, the academy student answered with his usual smile. Could I also learn? Said Ichigo from his perch on Naruto's head. I cannot stop you from trying, responded the sword-wielding rabbit. But you would find it much more difficult. Most rabbits your size do not have the necessary strength in the arms and fingers to properly wield a one-handed weapon, not to mention the issue of finding a sword the right size. I will not send you away when training your partner, however. Good, the summon leader said, smiling, and the seriousness of the moment evaporated in an instant. We'll work on the details later. Now, pranks. What do you have planned? Smiling himself, Naruto answered. Well, there's this one I have. Wahahaha. You have to get me here for that one. I know a genjutsu that'll complement that prank perfectly. Nanabo said, repeated hitting the ground with his left paw. Naruto had quickly noticed that whenever the rabbit laughed hard enough, he unconsciously did so. Some kind of nervous tic, probably. Glad to have you there. I'll make sure to give you a call once I have the timing down. The boy answered, smiling. Perfect. Now is there anything else on the plan? The bunny leader asked. Well, there are a meeting of those in on the prank a little later, so you might want to be present for that, but outside that I didn't have anything planned out. Nanabo thought about it for a minute. He was about to say yes, but held back at the last moment. He'd nearly not realized, but Ichibo had barely said a dozen words since he'd started talking to the boy. While his grandson could be direct with him in private, he tended to stay silent and defer to him much too much while in public. The small rabbit would be much more active if he was absent. No need. Ichibo, you'll be speaking for the rabbits in my stead, okay? Ichibo tensed. You sure, Kage? Perfectly. I'm sure you'll do a good job as my voice. The rabbit on Naruto's head nodded. Then, Naruto, I'll be waiting for your call about that prank. Don't forget to call on Miyamoto every night for training at the very least. Will do. See you, partner, Nanabo said, waving. Naruto waved back, and the summon disappeared. Prank Day 6. The village was abandoned, and had been for quite some time. It was situated about halfway between Konoha and the border to grass, deep in the forests of Fire Kingdom. The Naruto that had found it guessed from the buildings that it had been some sort of logging camp, but that was all he could tell, really. Its exact position and its current state made it a perfect meeting spot for the various clones of Naruto who were in charge of the trading network. These bunshins were originally 3, but ended up having to multiply themselves to keep up with the multiplying copies that were spreading everywhere in the ninja world. They were now more than a dozen. The way they increased in number was simple. Originally, the 3 each took care of an area, meaning either east, west, or fire itself. But as the number of clones infiltrating various places grew, there started being too much for a single person to track. The clone in charge of that area created new bunshins either as secretaries, or split his territory in smaller increments. And the process repeated itself when too much work started piling up once again. The entire group was inside the building which looked the most stable, around a table that was actually a clone, as no furniture intact enough was found. They were grouped as per their respective region. Okay people, this is our 3rd meeting, said the bunshin in charge, who was officially head of the region of Konoha. Anyone has anything urgent to bring to the table, or can we get directly to the agenda? No one said anything? Then let's get to it. First, clothes for Ariko. Status? A clone rose from his seat in response. The only difference between him and the other Narutos was the set of goggles he wore around his upper left arm, the symbol of the jumpers. I brought the package to Konoha yesterday night, and delivered it directly to her place. That was what jumpers did. They used the Kawarimi Jutsu to jump distances and bring packages. They were only few as of now, but their number was expected to grow quickly. Good, one down. Second is, we have our first stock from outside Konoha. I know it isn't much, but it's gonna be enough as samples to see if those items are worth it. We have spices, medicinal plants, silk and a crate of Hakutocho peaches. Janae, he nodded to the civilian clone parents. You're leaving with those. We'll be expecting news as soon as you have them. They both nodded in return. This would actually be their first task as an actual part of the network. Anything to add about this? Silence answered him. 3 then. Maps. A pair of bunshins stepped up and unrolled a map nearly as long as the table. The leaders of the network had switched from the smaller ones to this cloth representation when issues of scale became evident between the various maps. As of yesterday, we now have a team in both Ricefield Country and in Northern Tea Country, which means we now have members in 7 different countries. By this time next week, we should be in an even 10 countries, provided that the team to Wave Country can find a boat to ride on. Clones nodded left and right in agreement. The team to Wave was already 5 days late, and it seemed it could continue in that vein for a while. This brings us to our last point, catalogs. He brought a rolled scroll to the table. We have the first draft of the list of products the network could get his hands on, along with the estimated prices. The T-Country products are not yet there, as the group arrived only early this morning. He brought out other scrolls, copies of the first. I'm expecting region heads to come after the meeting to get one. Any last words before we close the meeting? As usual, only silence answered. Then meeting closed. The next one is in a week in Warehouse 4. Let's get back to work, people. The clone leading the meeting clapped in hands twice and rose, as did everyone else. Most walked or jumped out, with only a few remaining. Janae and Ane walked to the person who was, if only nominally, their superior. Are all meetings like this? The Bunshin impersonating the father asked. What, you expected anything else? We're all Narutos, so long meetings would kill us with our mediocre attention span for such things. Fast and loose is the way to go. He tossed the catalog to the head of Eastern Fire Country. Beside, it works. That's what's important, in the end. The supposed parents couldn't find any way to refute that. Prank Day 9. Okay, now what? Said the leading clone back to the group. This particular group was one of the 5 training in the new elemental techniques, with the one assigned to them being Katan, Akiraka Jigoki. As it often happened within clone ranks, the whole jutsu learning had become somewhat of a competition being the various teams. Boasting led every group to proclaim that they would finish first, and now each was stuck trying to back their words. I don't know. Let me get the scroll, said another Banshin, who then took off in a run. The other members had nothing else to add, so they only focused at keeping the black balls over their hands stable. Those balls were the core of the technique, a sort of shell upon within which you built the fireball, or so they understood. Those balls could be thrown, though distance quickly made stability an issue, and would burst upon contact with anything solid, releasing the flames inside. They hadn't actually found what made the technique dangerous as of yet. They knew the scroll mentioned most students having died due to accidents in training, but most failures they had encountered released fire similar in amount to that of that fire breath technique Naruto had seen Sasuke use, and not much more. Enough to burst a clone, sure, but hardly deadly enough to be banned by ninja standards. The clone came back with another, this one holding the scroll. Standard practice, actually, with all the techniques that sometimes went out of control around this room. They hadn't another physical set of copies of the scroll of forbidden seals. It just hadn't come up. The leading clone grabbed and unrolled the scroll, and started reading out loud. Dragon, reverse tiger, dragon focus chakra above the palm of either hand, form of a black ball, constant concentration, aha. He intoned. After having generated a stable ball, one can now feed the technique fire aspect chakra using his other hand, increasing the heat so contained. He quoted directly from the paper. He then looked at the whole group. Silence ruled for a second. So, how does someone generate fire aspect chakra? No clue, said the leader, and this was visibly the general opinion. We'll need to find out. Hours later, they hadn't advanced a single more inch. There was nothing as such in the copies of the academy textbooks they had. The other Katan technique scrolls only referred to it without explaining what it was, and all other clones had no clue what it was or how it was formed. In the end, they kept working on generating and maintaining the sphere, and would think about how to find a solution. At worst, if they found nothing, they'd petition to ask Irika at the next council meeting. They were at an impasse, otherwise. Prank Day 11. Do a little turn! Exclaimed Ringo. Ariko rolled her eyes. Turn! 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 The others took up as a chant. Ariko obligatorily did a turn, causing the skirt to twirl along with her. The 5 girls before her watched in rapt attention as it did. I like that shade of orange. Amber, right? Said Ringo. Yes, but the previous ensemble went much better with her skin tone, countered Fumichi. This skirt flutters so prettily. Is it silk, or something else? Added Mihoshi. Discussions intersected questions as the group argued upon the merits of the latest ensemble. Ariko answered as best as she could, though she had realized she was in over her head. And how? Just in the last 2 hours she had learned the names of 24 shades of green, and at least half that in red, yellow, and orange separately. And what kind of color name was Atomic Tangerine anyhow? And that's not counting cuts or materials. Ariko, being Naruto, had had a very limited wardrobe for most of her memories, and rarely opportunities to buy new clothes before the start of the prank. Naruto's well-known bright orange shinobi outfit had actually been delivered to his door one day, and Naruto, and the clones, by extension, were pretty sure the old man had something to do with that. And they were right, somewhat. After a meeting where the boy had complained not being able to buy this piece of required ninja equipment, the third had ordered the ANBU to drop said piece of clothing at the boy's door. He'd even specified that there should not be any tracking seals or other surprises of the sort. The ninja who received the request had the bright idea of finding the required object in the most visible of available colors, as he'd been hunting said boy after a prank often enough. He thought it would help. Needless to say, Naruto loved it, and it did not help in any way. So, which one do you prefer? Asked Fumichi as the discussing died down. Ariko didn't know what to answer. To her male eyes, none were something she would willingly wear, outside a prank, of course. As something for ninja, they all failed, being far from solid enough to withstand active service, and from his limited civilian point of view all were equally comfortable. Well, the skirt bothered him some, but that was because a man shouldn't wear such things, and not any other reason. In the end, she answered what she could. None of them, really. I prefer the suit I usually wear at the academy over all of them. It was the best she could come up with. The rest of the group sighed in near-perfect harmony. You're such a tomboy, Ariko, said Ringo. The clone, of course, was in no way insulted by this. Your mother is dead, right? Added Asano. Asano. We don't ask such things. Fumichi, the leader of the group, replied, cuffing the girl lightly on the shoulder. The effect was completely lost when she turned towards Ariko with expectant eyes, visibly desiring the answer like the others. Ariko acted as if the question surprised her, mainly to gain time to think. Neither she or any other Naruto clone had worked out much of her history or family, so she didn't know what to answer. As this was the second time this happened, she mentally noted that she'd have to get together with a few other clones and work out a complete history, and that sooner than later. But now, answering was first. She decided to go along with it, as it would be difficult to argue otherwise. She also supposed it was factually true, as Naruto had none he could call mother. Yes, she answered, bowing her head. And you were raised by your father alone, or only with other men, right? Right, she said, as this was actually the truth. Irika and the old man were the primary figures in his life, and both were male. I knew it, Fumichi said. Wait, how did they know that? How did you find out? The Bunshin asked. I've known 3 types of tomboys. There are those who are raised as tomboys because their mothers were tomboys, those who refuse to act like their mothers and so act like tomboys, and those who are raised by men and act like them without knowing any better. The first type knows somewhat about cosmetics, fashion, and such stuff, as their mother will have taught them what little they know. The second knows most, however willingly doesn't care or apply it in any way. Only the third type really doesn't know. She then turned around. So, girls, one of our number need our help in learning what it is to be a woman. What do you say about that? She asked the rest of the group. All smiled. Let's go! Let's go! Replied Ringo, visibly eager. Turning back to her, Fumichi was smiling herself. Today then, we're gonna teach you about fashion, using the sacred female art of people watching. Ariko was then dragged to an ice cream shop in the middle of the business district, and had to comment on the people passing by. Like, this man is a well-to-do peasant, or a down-on-his-luck merchant. Her colleges were simply better, however. A peasant in his best clothes, said Nishi. This cut is quite out of fashion, and he visibly isn't used to wearing them. A successful merchant going to do something dirtying, pointed out Mihoshi. While most of what he wears is old and used, he's wearing new fashionable sandals, and the bracelet he wears seems to be worth quite a bit. How about this group? Asked Ariko, pointing at a group of 3 children playing together. Just to see what they could say. The girl, I'd say minor nobility. She has a posture like she's used to getting her way, and most non-nobles wouldn't let a child out to play with a pendant, replied Fumichi. The two boys are peasant sons, visibly, added Ringo while taking a bite of her ice cream. Resistant clothes. Shades that hide dust well and clean easily. Left one works the earth with his parents, probably, pointed out Asano. You can see the earth stains that don't wash out on his knees. Maybe there was something to this fashion thing after all. Prank Day 15. Iruka was finishing work alone at the academy. It wasn't anything new. Being head teacher had its perks, a somewhat higher salary and more authority, but also had its disadvantages, such as the extra work that tended towards late hours. The Chunin had forgotten how many times he had to beg off a diner or a drink, simply to continue working. But in this case, it was an advantage. The current academy class just had their first history exam, and Iruka wanted a look at Naruto and his two clones' work. Not that he wanted to change anything. No. He just wanted to make sure the tests wouldn't give clues pointing toward the infiltrating copies. He'd only change answers if he really needed to. Grateful for the fact that he was alone in the building, Iruka infiltrated his coworker Kazuhi's office and took out the latest test papers. Less than a minute later, he had the 3 answer sheets lined up on the desk and started poring over them. 97 for Ariko, Iruka thought. 71 for Muramaru and 45 for Naruto. A quick look revealed nothing incriminating. Iruka was of two minds about bringing the subject up to Naruto. On one side, if he gave the teachers what they expected, they'd be less curious about him. On the other, Naruto didn't really need to use the prank to pass. It would be much better if he went through on his own efforts. Then again, the teacher thought. It's obvious from Ariko's results that he masters the material. He started going down the questions, comparing them one by one. Naruto hadn't won himself any points by writing down "don't care" as the answer to question 9. Then Iruka came to question 13 out of 20. Ariko's answer was picture perfect, an exact textbook answer, which netted her 5 points. Muramaru's was similar, with some difference in vocabulary, which was worth again 5 points. But it was the same with Naruto, and on his sheet was written a red 0 beside the answer. Iruka reread the 3 answers one after the other. All had the same core meaning, the same information, with only some differences in vocabulary. Yet Naruto got a 0 where the others gained points. Iruka froze at the implications. They jumped into action. A few seconds later, the original tests were back into their drawer, while Iruka had brought out last year's final exam. And again the same pattern came up. Even worse. Sometimes Naruto's answer was the exact same as the one of another student, and always was Naruto's rank lower. Now fully into the chase, Iruka brought out everything, all the tests, all the notes, all the graded assignments Naruto had done since entering the academy. He didn't go in details, passing over quickly, focusing on the questions with the worst results, comparing them to others in his class. He quickly came to the very conclusion he'd been afraid of. Naruto should have passed long ago. His report card for his first year at the academy had him fail by less than 3%, and that was including everything, such as his taijutsu, borderline pass, and his ninjutsu, total fail. Iruka's recalculation would have brought Naruto's final score by at least 5 points, if not more. Continuing on, the second year was the same. However, Naruto was already visibly starting to make less effort. The number of missing assignments increased, the answers became less worked on and more rushed, and his notes were lower, even in Iruka's recalculations. This time the teacher wasn't sure if Naruto would have actually passed or failed, his scores were just too much on the limit to tell. Then coming to the third year, Iruka noticed something else. He'd not realized before, but last year was the third time in a row that the final ninjutsu examination was on the bunshin. Thinking back, he remembered Mizuki suggesting it last year, while he couldn't remember how the decision was made the year before. Some people might think it coincidence, but Iruka doubted the existence of the word when it came to Naruto. There was simply too much for that. "Iruka, are you there?" said a voice. The teacher jumped out of his chair at the sound, only to recognize Naruto's voice. "Here," he said in answer, then was hit by a wave of guilt as he looked down at the piles of exam paper. While he hadn't joined in the oppression, he'd been head teacher, so it was his responsibility to ensure that every student had a good education. And he flubbed it. "Is everything okay, sensei?" You were supposed to be at the meeting 30 minutes ago, his student said. A quick look at the clock confirmed those words. It was already past 10. He'd been so into it he hadn't noticed. Turning to look at his young charge, Irika didn't know what to say. How could he explain? He had to, however. Naruto deserved that in spades. Naruto, Irika said, his voice low. Take a seat. The boy did, his face questioning all the while. The Chunin teacher knew he wasn't acting as Naruto was used to, so he wasn't surprised. I'm sorry, Naruto, the adult said as soon as his student was fully in his seat. I failed you. The boy went as though he wanted to interrupt, but Irika stopped him with a hand and continued. I've been going through your latest history exam, just to make sure you hadn't inadvertently given your teacher any clue when I found something. Damn, Naruto said, hitting his open left hand with his fist. I thought I had done well enough. Is the prank in danger? Or is Kazuhi only suspicious? He put both his hands forward as if praying. Please tell me it's only suspicion. Nothing like that, answered Irika, inwardly cursing the fact that he'd given the wrong idea. There's really no other way to say it, he added gravely. Naruto, your teachers failed you on purpose. You should have passed 3 years ago. Irika dropped his head in shame. And I didn't notice before now. There was an uncomfortable silence for a minute or so, then the teacher brought his head back up. Looking at the face Naruto was making hurt. Broken was the only description that fit in his mind. Nevertheless, he soldiered on. He explained how he just noticed, how the notes had been changed. He gave his revised scores, and explained when he should or should not have been promoted. It took a good hour. The Chunin then went back to silence to let his student process the information. It wasn't long before Naruto answered. So, what happens now? He said, his voice sad beyond measure. Now depends on you, Naruto. If you want, I'll go right this minute to the Hokage with what I found. He will not be happy with hearing what I have to say, but I'm sure he'll promote you to genin on the spot, along with some form of punishment for those who wronged you. I don't know if you'll get a team right away, Irika continued, as that depends on how many genin students and jonin teachers are currently available. You'd have to drop your prank, however, the teacher added as an addendum. Naruto reacted to this, however. And what would you recommend? The boy said in a small voice. Irika thought for a good moment about this. He loathed what he was about to say, but it was what was best in his mind for his student. Personally, I'd recommend keeping the course and finishing the year. Your notes from last year show that you visibly need to revise the basics, especially in maths and history. With all the students graduating, I'm 100% sure that getting a team won't be an issue, nor will getting a Jonin sensei be one. And don't worry, he added with a growl in his voice. I won't be forgiving this. I am already building a report on the favoritism of the teachers, and this will feature preeminently in it. The idea that someone would go to such lengths to hurt a child was horribly revolting to him. No need for. Seeing the face Naruto made with that start, Irika cut him off. Yes, there is need. If it happened once, it can happen again. And I will not have a child hurt simply because some people think he doesn't deserve what he worked for. I will have to live with not noticing what they did to you for the rest of my life, but I will not compound that mistake by letting them get away with it. And that is final. Naruto shrank back at those words. He'd never seen Irika so violently passionate, outside possibly the beginning of his battle against his co-teacher Mizuki. Then he smiled. A passion like that he could respect in a teacher. I won't say anything else about it then, Naruto said. And we'll go with what you said about school. I'm kinda curious how far the prank can go, anyhow. He was smiling all the while. Looking at Naruto, Irika saw through the smile the boy was giving the words he knew Naruto meant, and those words were a balm to his soul. To the Chunin, that smile meant all is forgiven, and that was all he really needed to have. Prank Day 17. Officially, the Special Assassination and Tactical Squad, otherwise known as the ANBU, occupied 3 different buildings. These were of course simply decoys. The real ANBU office was a single completely different building in the opposite part of town, hidden within a trading company's offices. It was guarded day and night by at least a dozen different shinobi. This changed nothing for Naruto, however. He had long ago learned how to get near said office unseen at certain hours, where the shadows were deep enough for him to crawl there without being visible. He knew of 5 people, smokers, who tended to leave their windows open, and the best time to dodge the lines of sight of the rooftop patrols. He could get in the building undetected any day. Nanaboa's genjutsu was overkill, really. Once inside, he followed a preset path he remembered from long ago, back when he was younger. After a set of pretty bad days, he'd been shifted into ANBU custody while said ninjas tried finding out what had happened. Which, unfortunately, they never did. Nevertheless, that meant that a young Naruto Uzumaki lived along the ANBU for nearly a month, eating in their cafeteria and sleeping on their couches. He even had a locker with what little possessions he owned at the time. And that was where he was heading. With silent gestures he directed the elder rabbit within the winding corridors of the building, while Ichibo served as a lookout from his usual position from the crown of Naruto's hair. The student was gradually leading both summons toward the place where the ANBUs left their mask when not on duty. Once inside, the room was never locked. In case of urgent summons, the trio quickly pushed the whole section of lockers off the wall, and gained access to their contents by removing the back panel, bypassing the security of even the most paranoid ANBU ninja this way. Now, look carefully, Nanabo said in a whisper, his paws starting to move. Hare, serpent, rat, reverse tiger, hare. He then reached out and touched the ANBU mask in the locker before him. The important part of this technique is the state of mind of the user, he continued in his low tone. He must have firmly in mind the thought that everything is normal. Practice it while I set up the rest of the stuff. He reached out and grabbed a scroll hanging from the side of Naruto's backpack. Naruto's first try failed, as did his second, third, and such all the way to the 17th. You're using too much. Try the minimum you can, said Ichibo from his perch. Try was the key word here. The jutsu failed to hold again. Still too much, the black rabbit answered. I can't put out any less than that. It's already difficult enough to get that little, he whispered, remembering not to shout at the last second. Nanabo came back from the locker he was working on at that very instant. Show me, partner. The student did. Again, the rabbit leader said, and once again Naruto complied. The summoned shaked his head. Try this one. Hare, serpent, rat, reverse tiger, serpent, dragon, reverse rat, dragon, hare. Remember the state of mind. The boy nodded and tried again. This time, the technique held by the third attempt. Good work, the elder summon said as he lightly slapped Naruto's shoulder. He would have ruffled the student's hair, but Ichibo's presence made that impossible. The jutsu you just did is an advanced version of the other one. It is both harder to notice by the affected person and harder to dispel in general, but generally too intensive for my pranks. I unfortunately cannot cast it over and over as I can with the other one, he noted, scratching his chin. By the amount you've put out in the last few minutes, I don't think you'll have an issue. He smiled. Now let's go on. The group went back to work and had whole place done before 20 more minutes had elapsed. Prank Day 18. Ikazuchi Oboro was officially a chunin of the Leaf, and had been so for the past 10 years. He tried 3 times his chance at a jonin promotion, and failed all 3. He was good enough, though somewhat lacking in leadership. He was usually on long-range courier or infiltration missions, and rarely in Konoha at all. At least, that what most documents would have you believe. Reality, as usual, was somewhat different. Ikazuchi Oboro was really a career ANBU, acting under the identity of Bat. He was one of the many who patrolled the town of Konoha proper, acting as both police and counter-espionage officers. And he'd been doing said job for the past 5 years. He was well known for a mix of sound-based genjutsus and ninjutsus that he used effectively for both stealth and combat purposes. And no, his parents were not killed in front of him while he was young by career criminals, unless by young you mean 16 and that the QB is a career criminal. He was in position, overlooking the merchant district, when his superior rat signed for a hidden meeting in their usual spot. A quick shunshin brought him there, and his captain appeared the same way a second later. Inspect your belongings, ANBU. A surprise inspection? Now? Oboro thought. Nevertheless, his hands automatically went through the motions of checking his equipment. Armor in place. Sword also. Holsters, present and full. Mask, worn and undamaged. Rainbow wig still there. He even went and confirmed that his poofy nose was still glued on. All equipment present and accounted for, Captain. Rad visibly reacted under the mask, something which was evident to anyone used to ANBU. You are summoned before the Hokage at once. Go, he said, visibly sighing. That explains the inspection, at least, he thought. Yes, sir. Another Shunshin brought him out. Bat reporting as ordered, Hokage-sama, he said. Said person wasn't alone. The commander-in-chief of the ninja forces, Shikaku Nara, was there, along with both the ANBU commander and Kurenai Yuhi. He was pretty sure by now that something was up, but he couldn't see what it was. The snickers from the ANBUs watching the entrance had been illuminating in that regard. Bat turned to the side. He did so instantly, coming face to face with a mirror. Tell me what you see. Myself, Hokage-sama. More details, please. Myself in ANBU's suit, Hokage-sama. The village leader didn't stop him, so he continued. I am wearing my regulation armor over a black suit, with my sword strapped at my back. My mask is as usual half lime green and half hot pink, with a blue teardrop on the pink side and a purple star on the pink side, both below the eyes. My regulation poofy nose is in place, as are my exaggerated eyebrows. My multicolor wig is in proper position and still curly. Should I go in more detail? No, that will be enough, Bat. Besides him, the ANBU commander did a face palm. Continue looking at the mirror. He did so. It barely took a moment before Kurenai brought her fingers in a ram's seal. Kai! At that very instant, Oboro instantly noticed what was wrong. He quickly ripped out the nose and the eyebrows, and the wig joined them on the floor barely an instant later. The paint on the mask proved more resistant, however, so it ended up staying. Hokage-sama, I have no excuse, he quickly realized. He remembered the previous hours perfectly, and could not think of anything else to add. Do with me as you will, he said, head down. A ninja came down and gathered the items he had just removed, and added them to the contents of a box. Judging by the number of noses and eyebrows, he wasn't the only one who'd fallen to this prank. There even was a full ANBU mask in the box. It had a horn, like that of a unicorn. Bat, return to the ANBU quartermaster, who will give you a new mask. Then, please have hamsters sent our way. The ANBU in the clown mask wasted no time in leaving, glad to have gotten out of any horrible punishment. Once he was gone, Sarutobi turned toward the Jonin next to him. So, what are your thoughts, Kurenai-san? I have never seen the like, she answered. Most genjutsus affect the five senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. A few rare go directly to the sense of balance while bypassing the others. The only woman in the room was visibly thinking. But I've never heard of something like this one. The technique behind this prank somehow affects one's perception of normality, making the subject of this jutsu seem perfectly normal to everyone noticing it. I have no clue where such a technique could come from. Not from Konoha for sure. Thank you, Kurenai-san. Please write down anything you can think that might help, the Hokage said as a ninja with a carrot-like nose and exaggerated lips came in. He sighed. Anything, he quickly added. The third could finally, as the other ninjas had left, indulge in a somewhat inappropriate laugh. As a leader of men he had to stay calm to the situation, but as a person he could not help but laugh. All the while he'd had the various ANBUs in his office he couldn't help but think Naruto would laugh at this. And that was the crux of the issue. This was very much a Naruto-style prank, but the genjutsu made it impossible for him to perform. As if an academy student with issues in the simplest of techniques could perform a genjutsu Konoha's foremost mistress of the art had no knowledge of. And where would he have learned it anyway? In the end, 16 ANBUs were found with tampered masks, while a search of the lockers found 20 more still unused. The prankster, however, was never caught, the only clue they found being the smell of rabbits. Prank Day 21. So, report. Anybody found anything? Said the clone leading this group to the numerous other copies before him. A stream of no in various formats were his answer from his partners at Learning Katan, Akiraka Jigoki. They were well and truly stuck. Which is not to say they did nothing. They had kept on training with the black spheres, managing even something similar to dodgeball in the last few days, but nothing on how to fill said constructs with the fire. Any clue on how to proceed? The clone added. Again, all answers were of the negative sort. The clones sighed. Whatever lead they might have had in the informal competition between the jutsu learning bunshin was evaporating like mist at high noon, if it hadn't vanished completely already. Another of the blonde copies was looking around. Shouldn't we be more than this? The leader did a quick head count and realized that this Naruto was right. They were missing at least 3 people, and he didn't remember any part of his group bursting since the last meeting. The group as a whole debated for a few minutes on what to do about this, when the point became moot. One of those missing had arrived. A few clones went and started questioning, while others just stared out, waiting for answers. We might have a solution. And then he had all ears. He basked in the feeling for a while, then gave a single instruction. Follow. The group did, and he led them through the sewers to a grate that hadn't seen much usage, by the looks of it. The leading clone stopped right beside the ladder going up. We all went the wrong way about this. We mainly focused about how, when we should have put effort on who and where. So tell me, the clone asked, who were the best known in Konoha for their fire techniques? Smirking, he then climbed the ladder 3 rungs at the time. When each member of the Katon group finally were back on ground level and saw where they were, they all wanted to hit themselves. The answer was evident, and they hadn't even thought of it. Before them was the Uchiha district, which had long been home to some of the most famous fire users in history. The technique they were trying to learn was even based on stealing that very power from exactly this family. Naruto had, long before the start of the prank, tried infiltrating the Uchiha district, mostly as a way to escape his pursuers. It had bounced back on him, as all points of entry were alarmed 3 ways from Sunday. That particular chase was cut very short at that point, and he got a double lecture and punishment for his trouble. But now they had a way to bypass such seals, and the 2 other missing clones were already doing so, negating the alarms on a half-hidden side door in the walls of the district. The group quickly made its way inside, while the pair of bunshins kept their position, maintaining the hole in the wards. So, what now, boss? The guiding copy said. Said clone looked around for an instant before replying. You found this, so it's your show, he answered with a smile. The rest of the group nodded their approval. The new leading bunshin looked around for a moment. Even if he hadn't known of what had happened here in the past, he could have guessed. While there were no bodies or blood in sight, the signs were evident. Charred spots on the walls, the results of fire jutsu, could be seen here and there. Leftover marks from kunai and shuriken dotted the place, and there were gouges in the grounds from the usage of ninja techniques. Any ninja worth his salt would have noticed what had gone on here. We split into 3 groups. The first 2 will go methodically and create a clone while holding anything interesting, especially whatever looks like a jutsu scroll. We then put it back where it was. Be careful about traps, as we might have only bypassed the first layer. The last group will go back out and gather blank scrolls for copying. We'll work the same way we did with the forbidden scroll, okay? The rest of the clones nodded. Outside of that, we leave everything as it is. This is not like whatever items we found abandoned, this is somebody's family legacy. As much as I like Sasuke, and I don't, even he doesn't something like that. Another series of nods was his answer. The guiding clone smiled. Then let's go, people. It took an hour and a half of searching before the Katon group found what they were looking for. Surprisingly, they ended up finding it in Sasuke's own former home, in his brother's room. Said room had been completely ransacked, but whatever scrolls were there hadn't been destroyed but only neglectfully strewn around. The specific scroll the group now had contained instructions for the clan's great fireball technique, but aimed at those whose elemental affinity wasn't fire. It contained various training exercises to improve ability with fire techniques, along with tips on how to tackle them. None of the Narutos had any ideas what was their elemental affinity, what it entailed, or if they even had one at all, so they guessed that was at least part of the issue they were having. The copy of said scroll joined their expanding library in a position of honor. In the end, it took a little more than 4 hours for the Katon group to go over the totality of the Uchiha compound, and the result was 29 different justice scrolls, some even containing more than one technique. Their various power levels were all over the place, from a complex A-ranked fire release technique they didn't think they would ever master, to a large scroll of E-ranked cleaning and grooming jutsu. They had even managed to learn and perform a few techniques from that one and use them to clean up their tracks. And by the end of the day, the group had managed the first of the fire training exercises, which meant that all of them could generate a flame similar to that of a match from their hands. Prank Day 26. Things were not going well for Janae and Ane. The two copies who represented the elder civilian couple were in charge of finding customers for the products the clone network could get their hands on, both for funds as the group did not want to live on Irika's money, and for their cover. It was not going according to plan, however. The two of them had visited dozens of stores, factories, and other such enterprises. People seemed interested, some even glad, until the following question came out. Who's the seat representing you on the Merchant Council? That killed everything. Once Janae said that they had no one representing them, their prospective customers at best became shy and evasive, and at worst had them thrown out of the building. Regardless of what happened, they were out of luck. They of course tried getting such a person to represent them, but that was not to be either. The most polite simply said no, while others tried buying them off. No one seemed to want to work with them. The one who came closest asked for an outrageous sum along with half the money from their sales as administrative fees, which were clearly bribes. As such, the merchant couple went and did what any clone of Naruto would when things were not going well. That is, go eat at Ichiraku Ramen. They were making headway into their second bowl when Tucci came up to join them on his side of the table. Good day, my name is Tucci and I'm the owner and head chef of Ichiraku Ramen. The young lady who served you as I am my daughter. He had a serious look. Is the ramen not to your liking? Janae guessed that the man had seen their unhappy faces and had wrongly thought his food was the cause. Of course not. The food is excellent. He managed not to add as usual at the last second. Then what is bothering the both of you, if you don't mind me asking? Tucci continued. Naruto, and by extension, his clones, had an ingrained respect of Ichiraku's owner that bordered on the religious. As such, both Ane and Janae had no issue answering the man. The story came out piece by piece, just as the clones had prepared it. They were a family of 4 who'd left grass country not to compete with Janae's elder brother Mitaki, who'd inherited their father's business. They'd chosen Konoha because they wanted security, and they thought one could not be more secure than in the middle of a ninja village. And Konoha was the greatest of them. When the problems the two Bunshins had with the various merchants came up, Tucci pronounced himself unsurprised. You're not the only one who's had issue with that group. Ichiraku Ramen has been in Konoha for more than 30 years, and even before my tenure the owner butted heads with them, he said with a sad smile. It got worse after the Kyuubi's attack, when half of them died suddenly, but it's pretty much always the same, the chef continued. They simply try to make more money for themselves by applying economic pressure on other people. Though there are rumors of worse things. But enough about that, Tucci said, a real smile going back up. What did you say you dealt in? Pretty much everything, Ane said, joining the conversation. We're a family of traders, and we have contacts in a lot of different places. Why, are you interested? You could say I am. There's been a surge in business in the last few weeks and my usual suppliers are struggling to keep up. I might try you out if you can supply me with what I need. Both Janae and Ane forced themselves not to react. They knew very well what had caused this upswing in sales. As of a little than a month ago, there were more than 1,000 Kage Bunshins of Naruto living in the city. And whatever money the clones got their hands on automatically went on one of two things, pranks or ramen. And ramen meant Ichiraku to Naruto. Janae handed Tucci his copy of the network's catalog. It was the latest version, which included the products from both tea country and vegetable country. Wave, however, was still late. The couple went back to their bowls as Tucci poured over the scroll. I brought each a third bowl before the chef came back up from reading. The prices on this scroll aren't the final prices, are they? He said. It would be too good to be true otherwise. No, this is the price we can get these items at. He thought for an instant. A 10% charge for transportation, along with the usual Konoha import tax. This was something the two clone parents had learned while dealing with all the paperwork. Konoha had both an import and an export tax, which went directly to the Hokage, and was used to fund village security. Tucci thought visibly for an instant, evidently calculating the numbers in his head. He then smiled. I think we can do business. Who knows, if the quality is good and the delivery rapid, I might have some other contacts who could use your services. Now let's discuss particulars. Tucci and Janae shook hands on a deal an hour later, and both made their way back to their respective shops. It was only a start, but the network had its official first client. Prank Day 29. Come on, try it, said Ken on his left. Try it, added Jishir on his right. I don't know, it feels like a waste, replied Goro. He was a Naruto clone working in Tanzakagai in an hotel as general help. Not to be insulting. Thing was, Tanzakagai very much had a gambling culture. The tourists came here to play, the ones living there played, everyone played, except maybe the casino owners. And even that wasn't always true. You just got a bonus yesterday, so you won't even affect your finances, Ken said, crossing his arms. Live a little, he exclaimed. Jishir came up and decided to try another way. You ever tried it? Goro was taken aback by the change in tactics. No. Then how can you say it's a waste? He continued. You think we're lying? No. Then come. If you don't like it, you can at least say that you've tried. We won't badger you anymore, replied Jishir. Promised? Samurai's honor, Jishir answered, putting his hand on his heart. Ken emulated him a second later. Okay, just once, Goro finally acquiesced. It couldn't hurt, could it? That night, the three of them ended up in one of the many casinos of the city. They played for tiny sums, nearly nothing, just for the fun of it. After 30 minutes, Goro had doubled his bonus. After an hour, Ken and Jishir caught on their comrades' luck and moved to the roulette table. The Naruto clone had doubled his monthly salary by then. It took 3 hours before casino employees asked them to come back another day. Security had watched over them like hawks but couldn't see any proof of cheating. Goro left the building telling the others that he did have fun, and with enough money to single-handedly pay for Ariko's house. His two partners left each with the equivalent of a few months' work. He did make a couple of bunshin as soon as he was alone, and these hit 3 different casinos with similar results. The word was out in the entirety of Naruto's clones before the sun was back up. All Narutos had luck at games of chance to spare. Prank Day 33. The real Naruto did not always go to class as himself. Sometimes he was Ariko, sometimes he was Muramaru, sometimes he skipped school entirely to train, and all of this never on a fixed schedule. For the first Taijutsu exam, he went as Muramaru. This was planned. Kuratori, the Taijutsu teacher, had started being quite a bit more demanding of the male clone than he was of everyone else. Not a punishment, but looking more like a test of his endurance than anything else. As such, Naruto expected that the first exam would be rougher for him as his orphan copy than it would be for everyone else. He was there mainly as a preventive measure, to ensure the continuation of his prank. And Kuratori did not disappoint. Where everyone faced someone roughly their level, the teacher took on Muramaru personally. And while Naruto was pretty sure the man was pulling his punches, it sure didn't feel like it. Nevertheless, Naruto gave the fight his all, and managed to last longer than the rest of the class had in their own battles. By the end, Naruto was tired, sweating and sore even in places he hadn't known could be that way. Kuratori stopped the fight barely a second before Muramaru dropped to the ground, exhausted. The teacher then left his student recover while he went over the results with everyone else. Said student ended up going last, classes having ended a while ago. First, your notes, the Chunin teacher said in his usual monotone. You have a clear A for the exam. The only things keeping you from a perfect grade are the facts that you still are wasting movements, and that you are still telegraphing your attacks a touch too much. Fix those 2 flaws and you will be as good as someone your age can be. The teacher then took a deep breath. Which brings me to the second item. He suddenly sounded twice as serious. I have a proposition for you. Something outside of school. I'd like you to meet me at the Memorial Stone tonight at 8. He put his hand on Muramaru's shoulder. Now, go home and have a good supper. The teacher rose and left. Oh, and good work on the exam, he added as he was crossing the door. Naruto didn't know what to think about that, but knew one thing for sure: 2 heads worked better than 1. As such, he quickly made his way home. The council needed to be informed of this, if only to discuss it. Maybe they'd even be able to have an idea about what was the proposition. He'd eat during the meeting. The council had no more clue what was the teacher's proposition than Naruto himself had. The only thing they were sure was that it wasn't the prank being found out, as everyone agreed that Kuratori would have gone straight to the other teachers, or worse, the Hokage, with his news. It comforted him somewhat, but not enough. Naruto did not like having too much attention paid to his clones outside of school. The girl gang was okay, not even being ninjas yet, but the focus of a chunin, high-skilled at that, was something he wanted to avoid. Nevertheless, he made his way to the memorial stone at the appointed time. Not being there would scarcely make things better. Still disguised as Muramaru, the real Naruto found Kuratori waiting for him where he had set up this meeting. "Follow me," the man said, and his voice was unnaturally tight. The chunin led the boy to a specific stone on the side of the area. It was somewhat taller than the others, with a single name at the top in bigger letters than the other names. Minato Namikaze, 4th Hokage of Konoha. You might not have known, but less than a year before you were born a demon attacked this village, the Kyubi. It was taller than anything living has the right to be, and its malevolence was so great some people died simply by looking at it. The 4th Hokage, whose name is at the top of this monument, ended up fighting the beast. Using a forbidden technique, he defeated the monster at the cost of his own life. Kuratori took a deep breath. But not before the demon caused incalculable damage to the village. Every single person on this stone died that day. He sighed. I have 17 family members on that stone. Both my parents, a single grandparent, my wife, my 2 sons, he trudged on. Both of my brothers and my sister, all of their spouses of their children. Naruto couldn't say anything about that. He knew mentally that the Kyubi had killed hundreds, maybe thousands of people, but it was the first time that he really saw the impact it had. He could almost see Kuratori's family in his mind's eye, and couldn't help but shed a tear at their loss. I would have happily joined them, but I made an oath to my father. The same oath my brothers swore, the same my father had years earlier to keep the family art alive, and not have it fall in the hands of other clans, he continued. My sons had made the oath, but their time has unfortunately passed, he said, looking down. I am getting old, and with the job I'm in I probably won't last another 10 years. As such I've been searching for the person who could be the next master of the sharp fist. And you're the best I've seen in the past 5 years, and the only one I can entrust this to. I've been testing you these past weeks, pushing you to your limits, to see if you could handle it. You did even better than I hoped, better than I did at that age. You have what it takes to be a master of the Hyuujin family style. The teacher looked directly at Naruto. As such, this is my proposition. Should you accept it, I will take you as my student and heir of my family. I will teach you everything there is to being a ninja, and how to survive it both physically and mentally. It will harsh, and you may have a very different opinion of me once it is done, but I will make you as great as I can. Are you in agreement? Kuratori said after a pause. Naruto did not know what to answer. There was too much thoughts slamming together in his head. There was the prank and the disguises and all the clones and someone who wanted him and... In the end, as usual, Naruto Uzumaki went with his heart. I accept, he said solemnly. Prank Day 34. Even though the day was a day off from the academy, Naruto called a meeting of those who were in on the prank. The decision the original had made was to be discussed, its effects needed to be analyzed. Good day everyone, Naruto said as soon as the 3 stragglers, the clones in charge of the clone network, arrived. He could have started without them, but the real student wanted everyone informed. I'm sorry for the unplanned meeting, but some things have to be discussed as soon as they can. Some of you might already have heard, but I'll repeat it anyway. He continued. Yesterday, Kuratori offered Muramaru to take him as an apprentice, and so to teach him his family art. I was Muramaru at the time, and I accepted his offer. What? Irika said, rising from his seat. He then seemed to realize his reaction, and looked around for a moment. His eyes then came to rest on the original Naruto. Naruto, can I speak to you alone for a moment? The Chunin said, his voice visibly tense. I don't think you need to, he started answering. Now, he said, his voice slipping in the usual tones he used as a teacher when punishing Naruto for his pranks. The effect was immediate. All the clones quickly and silently left. Only Ichibo stayed, not moving from the top of Naruto's head. What were you thinking? Iruka started as soon as the three were alone. The teacher most likely to find you out, and you decide to have him adopt you under a false identity? He seemed to realize something. You didn't tell him about the prank, did you? Of course not, Naruto replied. And he didn't adopt me, actually. He might as well have. An apprentice is considered an heir unless the master has either a wife or children, Iruka replied, clearly quoting the law. Again, what were you thinking? I just couldn't say no, Naruto said, his head down. You didn't see him before that stone, explaining his story. It hurt to watch how much he loved his family. Naruto brought his head back up. He's dead inside, you know. I didn't realize it before yesterday, but he's nearly empty. The only thing that's left is the continuation of his art, and I couldn't take that away from him. I know it's a risk, and that it wasn't a bright move, but it was the only one I could make. Will you be living with him? Iruka finally asked, his tone much more even. No. Good of you to at least think of that. It was his idea, Naruto replied. To keep off any image of favoritism, he said. The room was silent for a minute. Will you be telling him about the prank? Iruka finally asked. Not for now at least, the boy answered. I'd prefer not before the end of the academy year, if possible. Okay, the teacher answered. He then withdrew something from his pockets. Take this with you, then. Naruto recognized it instantly once he had it in his hands. It was the scroll Iruka had received during his meeting with the Sandaime. If anything happens and your identity is discovered, I want you to show Kuratori this, and explain him the situation. Send him to me if he still doesn't believe. If worse comes to worse, I'll bring him before the Hokage with everything I found. Come on, Naruto replied. Don't do that. I'd prefer not to, but it's a valid last resort. Better that than being sentenced with treason, or something similar, Iruka countered. Treason? Ichibo cried out from his perch. Iruka laughed a sarcastic little laugh. I wouldn't be surprised. I've begun not trusting logic when someone else's reaction of you is involved. You don't think there would be people who'd execute you just to get back at the Kyuubi? The student had to agree his teacher was right. There would be many clamoring for the death of the beast without care for its container. You may very well be right, sensei, he said dejectedly. Anyway, Iruka said. It's only a last resort. He then smiled. I'll be counting on your usual good work on the impersonation, Naruto. He then ruffled his student's hair from the side, taking care of not disturbing Ichibo there. Can the others get back inside now? Naruto asked. Oh, of course, the Chunin replied. He'd completely forgotten that they were supposed to be in a meeting. Sorry for the interruption. The rest of the discussion went as well as it could, considering most of the members were Naruto clones. It lasted only a dozen more minutes before everyone went his own way. Prank Day 35. Jinae and Ine were waiting for Ichiraku's opening, faces down in shame. They felt like they had betrayed one of the few real friends they, as Naruto clones, had. It had taken 9 days to fill Tochi's order. While the 2 first thirds were en route by day after the ramen chef's request, the rest took quite a bit longer to acquire. People were out of stock, others put severe markups on their prices or simply wouldn't sell at all. The group had to improvise. It took a few days to find other suppliers, and in some cases they even had to go to the source and buy directly from farmers and fishermen. Then it was found that some of their suppliers had used the opportunity to unload rotten or otherwise outdated merchandise, and they had to do that part all over again. They'd expected to take 3, maybe 4 days at most. It took more than twice as much. Still, they'd learned quite a bit. The merchant network would be much more vigilant in the future, and they'd found that storage scrolls kept perishable things from rotting. They had new and better sources for the items Tochi had ordered, which would make it easier for future orders. The 2 clone hoped dearly there would be future orders. Outside Ichiraku, they had nothing. The chef finally came out of the kitchen and greeted the 2 merchants. Good day, I suppose you are here for more ramen? Chicken like last time, or something else? No, we're here for a delivery, Ine said. Already? Tochi said, surprised. You must have good contacts. Can I inspect the merchandise? Sure. We have a space rented in a warehouse near the east gate, Janae said. I can show you right now if you wish. Tucci nodded. Please take the counter. I'll be out for half an hour. Sure, Dad, came her voice from the back of the shop. The three did small talk as the clone led the elder Ichiraku to the warehouse. Once inside, the chef waited no time before inspecting the merchandise. Good, he finally said. Everything is fresh enough. Some of the fish will have to be cooked soon, but everything seems in order. He turned toward the two Naruto bunshins. Can you have this brought to the shop this afternoon? I'll have a bank draft ready for you then. Sure, Ane replied. Pleasure doing business with you, Tucci said, then shook hands with both clones before leaving. Later that day, the two bunshins came out of Ichiraku with both the money from their first sale and a second, smaller order from the ramen stand. They'd also given the chef their address, and he said he'd contact them if he knew anyone looking for products they could get. With all the losses and errors the network had made, they wouldn't be doing much profit over their first order, but their name was now out there. The clone network was now officially in business. Prank Day 40. The Fire Ninjutsu team now understood why the Scroll of Forbidden Seals said the technique they were training intended to kill its practitioners. They'd finally had the breakthrough they'd been waiting for, and could now fully perform the technique, albeit not in the traditional manner. 5 clones had already died from failing to maintain the jutsu, and by damages which would have killed or maimed a normal ninja. The thing was that once you had the trick, putting fire aspect chakra in the sphere was easy, and frightfully so at that. There was, however, no way of knowing how much heat was inside outside of the fact that it became more and more difficult to handle when greater amounts of energy were inside. And when said sphere collapsed, it would release all that energy in a single burst, however much that was. The only defense the group had found up until now was to use another instance of the techniques to absorb the fire from the first. And even that had its drawbacks, as it could only be used upon a sphere bursting, since two stable spheres coming into contact with one another would destabilize both. Nevertheless, the group persevered. They currently were training to maintain powerful spheres without issue, and there were 6 clones maintaining the black balls in an isolated corner of the underground base. The record for now was a 7-days-old sphere, having been traded back and forth between clones day and night. The bunshin leading the group had no clue how strong it was by that point, but didn't want to find out. He probably would turn to smoke if he did. Prank Day 44. Kiritori's family owned a simple dojo built on a large piece of land on Konoha's eastern side. It was visibly built over the foundations of a much bigger building, as traces of the old were still easily discerned. Now that the paperwork is all done and signed, we can finally start, the older man said with a slight smile. He had been noticeably happier in the last few days, and many had discussed the changes. Naruto was simply happy to have made someone's life better. The term sharp fist is actually a misnomer, the teacher continued. It is mainly based on how the style looks more than how it works. I will show you. The Chunin took a specific stance, one different from any he had seen before. Kiritori was half-turned before him, with both arms at 90-degree angles on either side of his body. Now attack me, Kiritori said. Naruto as Muramaru did so, going for one of basic combinations of the academy style. The opening kick the Chunin parried with his left arm, and Naruto tried twisting for the follow-up attack, but found he couldn't. His leg was glued to the teacher's forearm. It was Kiritori who turned, and the added momentum for the pulling forced the student to follow. The hold only released once Naruto had passed his teacher's position, and he was sent tumbling and rolling on the ground. What was that? The person disguised as Muramaru replied as he got back up. That way you grabbed me. It is both a common chakra control exercise and the core of the sharp fist, the Chunin explained. While the sharp fist does have cutting techniques, at its base it is a soft style that manages its opponents. As such, it has more in common with the gentle fist of the Hyuga than with any other style in Konoha. That poking style of theirs? Naruto said. Indeed. How? Both try to control their enemies. The Hyuga do it by limiting the offensive abilities of their opponents, while my family's style does it by controlling the attacks themselves, Kiritori explained. How does the sharp fist attack then? The same techniques can be used defensively. The style focuses on attacks upon weak points, and what it uses to defend it can also use to open defenses, granting access to those areas. He went to one of the training dummies standing near the walls of the dojo, which was standing straight in a defensive position. Hitting first with an elbow, the teacher then forced the dummy's guard open by making its arms stick at the point of contact and twisting it out of the way. He even struck the dummy straight in the throat in the same movement. Like so. Effective, Miramara said, visibly impressed. Yes, the teacher said, continuing. But each part in turn. The first technique to master is the chakra control exercise, which is commonly called the tree walking technique. One simply channels energy to the area he wants to stick with, focusing in such a way as to stick like glue. It is used as a control exercise because one must regulate their chakra correctly. Too little and one doesn't stick, he demonstrated on a piece of wood at the dojo's side. The Chunin managed to lift the piece of timber only a single centimeter before the wood fell back to the ground. Too much and one damages the surface. This time, the wood rapped as he placed his hand, sending a few splinters in the air. Kuritori then turned toward his student. Start with the hands, as channeling chakra is easier there. He moved to the side, leaving Miramara to take his place before the planks. Don't worry, I will be watching and correcting you if necessary. Now go! Prank Day 49. The trio of Naruto clones sighed as the shore became visible through the fog. One last Kawamiri and they were finally back on dry land after nearly a full day in the water. The Naruto group was finally in wave. They were all that was left of a team of 20 who had tried swimming from the coast of fire, and the 7th such team to try their luck at it. The first 4 teams had tried boats, but the traitorous currents, the hidden reefs and other such dangers combined with the ever-present fog meant they'd failed halfway at best. The ones swimming did better, but still faced constant losses and clones. Only the last and largest group had managed anyone getting there. The next day, after a night's rest, the 3 made their way along the coast and found themselves outside and in sight what they supposed was the closest settlement to Fire Country. We split up, the leader said. He wasn't one of the original network bunchins sent to Wave, who were all gone by the 5th attempt, but he was the oldest amongst those left. We transform into unremarkable citizens and check things out. If you see anything interesting for the merchant network, note it, but I'm more interested in what's making it so difficult to get here. He turned toward his 2 compatriots. I'll be Shiro and I'll hitting the merchants and the shops. You, he pointed to the clone on his left. We'll be Nico and you'll look at the coast. Maybe we'll have more luck with finding passage on this side. He then turned to the last copy. You'll be Samri and I want you to hit the bars. Try to get as much information as possible on what's happening around here. The newly named Shiro looked away at the town in the distance. With all the issues we had, there's definitely something going on here, and we need to know what. He turned back to the other 2. You okay with that? They nodded, faces serious. Good, the leader said. We meet back here at sundown. He clapped his hands. Let's go, people. Each went his own way. By the 3rd step, all were unremarkable civilians, each different from the previous. They were inside the city less than a minute after that. Following the water, Nico found boats. Broken boats. He might not be a specialist in maritime construction, but even he could identify damage done by a sharp object upon wood. The boats he saw had been destroyed purposely, and he would bet that some group had taken axes to them. With the numbers he found, he was pretty confident this was the work of more than a single person, as it would have taken days for a determined man to wreck that many. He also saw people fishing, but the catches were few and the sizes small. Asking did not help, as the people were surprisingly defensive of what little fish they had. He was looked at carefully, as if everyone expected him to steal the little they had. It did not fill the Naruto bunshin with confidence. By the time the sun came down, Nico had found only 2 boats that might be seaworthy, and he wasn't even sure about that. That was out of more than 200 wrecks, which meant that unless they swam back, the 3 of them were stuck in wave for the time being. There was nothing on sale. No, that wasn't quite true. There was a little on sale, but nothing at any kind of reasonable price, and no food at all. The people were guarded and unhelpful, and there were beggars at every corner, emaciated and visibly suffering. There was nothing here that could be of interest to the merchant network. Not in the state the town was in. Shiro tried asking around to find out what was the issue, but no one was talking. Everyone ran or hid when he came close, and even the beggars were silent when asked what was going on. The clone was pretty sure there was some group or organization enforcing this no-talking policy. The fear in the eyes of those he asked was particularly illuminating in that regard. After an hour going around and having no success at gathering any more information, Shiro made his way back to the meeting spot. He hoped the other two had better luck. It was only midday, and the bars were already full. Sanryu, noticing the noise, had wisely decided to wait and watch before entering the first bar he found. A few minutes of observation revealed a half-dozen mercenaries coming and going, and his civilian appearance would have struck out like a sore thumb there. So he changed it. His new look he took from a memory of a female clone serving in a bar. Tall, broad shoulders, and few facial scars. That and a scratched-out mist insignia on his forehead. The female clone had clearly seen how missing men were treated, and that was exactly what Sanryu needed right now. Nobody stopped him as he made his way inside, and a single glare cleared him a spot at the counter. "Beer," he called, and a fearful bartender handed him one instantly. He took in half the glass in a single gulp, thanking in his mind the fact that clones didn't seem to be able to get drunk. He then slammed back the glass. "Tastes like piss," he said, keeping in character. The mercenaries around relaxed at that. "I know, right?" one said. They laughed. A good half the men in the tavern followed suit. While they did so, the Naruto copy took the time to look around. The whole place was filled with fighters and warriors, visibly swords for hire, with weapons in plain sight. Taking his glass, he tossed back the rest of the beer and swore. "I gotta get myself some better booze than this," he said, then looked at the tables opposite the counter. "Any of you scum know anybody paying? There's bound to be someone in need of dying around here." A few drinkers were offended and reached for their weapons, but it didn't go farther than that. Then a mousy dark-haired man came up. "Well." Shiro and Nico were deep in discussing when Sanryu came up. He was back in his civilian guise. "Are your news as bad as mine?" he asked as he stopped before the two. "Depends on what you have," Shiro replied. "What we can say is that there are no boats, nothing to buy, and that everyone seems to be starving, all of that because of some unknown group." "Gato Company," Sanryu said. "What?" "That's who's in control of this place. From what I remember, they're a shipping outfit doing import-export," he explained. "Gato has at least a bar full of mercenaries under his command, and at least another missing ninja. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was at more than twice that much. If they're starving the place and cutting communications, that means they're hiding something, probably drugs or smuggling," Shiro replied. "Maybe even slave trading," added Nico. "True," the leader said. "Any opposition?" "Not much," the bar infiltrator replied. "Main rebels were eliminated pretty thoroughly some time ago. Only one left seemed to be an old man who's building a bridge to the mainland. It's about halfway done, but the man is now missing." The other two whistled. "He's got courage, I'll give him that," Shiro said. "Question is, what do we do about it? This place is worthless to the network, but I don't like leaving it like this. And bringing more money here to improve things will only make it worse." The three were silent for a good minute, then Nico answered. "We kick things up the chain. As much as I want to get involved, the Clone Council needs to know about this before we try to do anything." The other two nodded. "And I have an idea how," the clone continued. Prank Day 50. Sarabody Hiruzen sighed, looking down at the boy who was seated in the chair opposite his desk. If only he could focus all this talent toward better applications, the third Hokage thought, he'd be one of our best genin. "I suppose you know why you are here, Naruto?" "I didn't do it," the boy in orange replied instantly. The Hokage noticed he was at least getting better at lying, since he had none of his usual tells present. "Oh, and I suppose you don't know who painted Kazuhi's classroom bright pink, right?" The academy student rose as if to exclaim something, then fell back down in his seat. "No," he said, and Sarutobi could clearly see the lie this time. "This has got to stop, Naruto," the Hokage explained. "This is your 4th year at the academy. 4th. It's clear you don't lack the talent, with everything you managed to accomplish, but you have to do better. It won't be possible for you to stay in the academy forever until you pass. Already, I've been having some issues keeping you enrolled. The fact that he'd started young was the only saving grace he had. There were still students Naruto's age enrolled, so he'd been able to argue for another year. Tell me, what are you doing differently this year? The Hokage asked. How do you expect to pass this time? Let it not be said that the Hokage wasn't curious about this prank of his. He was glad Naruto had at least an idea, but curiosity was gnawing at him. This time, Naruto didn't even rise. He simply stood there in his chair, arms crossed and refusing to say anything. This is the fourth prank on the teachers in 2 weeks, Naruto, and not small-scale ones either, Sarutobi said. And I suppose you'll say that you had nothing to do with the teachers' offices getting filled with cats? Naruto smirked at those words, and Hiruzen had him then. I see you did, he said, voice serious. Yeah, I did that one, Naruto said, sighing. But you had to admit it was funny, old man. The Hokage took a deep breath. Let's make a deal, Naruto. I won't punish you for those pranks of yours, not right now, he explained. He hadn't planned to, since he didn't want to interfere any more into the boys' school life. But you have to pass this year. I'm not even sure I'll be able to get you a place in the academy in the next session. You do that, and there won't be any punishment for those pranks of yours. He then glared down at the boy. Fail, however, and I'll see you on trash duty until you turn 18. You have that, Naruto? No sweat, the boy replied. It's a deal, then? The Hokage said, extending his hand. The boy shook. It's a deal. Sarutobi smiled as he sat back down. I'll hold you onto that, he said seriously, then smiled. So, tell me about those pranks you most assuredly did not do. Naruto smiled back. Well, first there was Prank Day 51. Iruka had been surprised earlier at being called for a meeting, especially since the next one planned would only in 2 days. He'd stressed for a moment, imaging the worst, before relaxing. Naruto would have informed him directly if something really dangerous was going on. Still, it occupied his thoughts until classes finally ended. This time, he used the Urahara passageway closest to his home to reach Naruto's base. By now, he was quite used to the darkened paths, and found himself at the council table less than 2 minutes before the appointed time. He was also starting to recognize the different council members. The trio with the books at the end of the table was the group in charge of the trading network, followed by the 2 merchant parents. The Naruto next to them wasn't the real one, only a clone who was currently taking his place in class. Ariko was next, talking with the clone in charge of the underground training. There was also a new one he hadn't seen. Only differences between him and the original were a set of goggles tied to his left arm instead of over his head, and a patch on the other side with what seemed to be a pair of waves depicted. The Chunin didn't know what that meant, but he suspected he would soon find out. Sorry, I got intercepted below, the original disguised as Muramaru said, finally taking his place at the table. Since Ichigo's arrival, he was easier to find. Outside public situations, the rabbit could always be found on or around the real academy student. In the last few days, Naruto was always Muramaru, as the training his new master was giving him was too intense for a Kaiga Bunshin. So the real student started. Sorry all for the surprise meeting, but the network heads have something to discuss which they claim is urgent. He turned to the 3. Your show now. Let me guess, Janae, the civilian father, interrupted. Wave? Yes, Wave, the center merchant head answered. Iruka remembered something about Wave being late in some way. And what's so urgent about it? He asked. The unknown clone stepped up. I'm Nico, 4th generation jumper as part of the original Wave expedition. 4th generation? Ichigo interjected. Clone of a clone of a clone of a clone, responded 4 different Narutos around the table, Nico included. 2 days ago, me and 2 other clones finally managed to swim our way to Wave, he continued. The Chunin teacher's eyes grew wide. The waters around Wave were well known to be treacherous and usable only by knowledgeable sailors. He'd known genin who died in places like that one. He didn't want to know how many clones had vanished on the way. There's nothing valuable in Wave for the trading network at the moment, and a simple reason to that, Gado Corporation, the jumper explained. They amassed a large force of mercenaries along with some missing ninjas, and used that force to close down all access to and from the island. Ouch, Irika said, then continued when he saw everyone was looking at him. Gato Corporation is big. Very big. Big enough that it is economically more powerful than a good number of ninja villages and countries. Nico continued. One thing is sure, whatever they're planning in Wave, it can't be good. The population is starving, fearful and untrusting. There's no law, and the mercenaries are basically doing what they want with the population. I suppose you have a plan? The real Naruto asked. Nico nodded. The three of us do. You see, there's someone building. Irika rose, interrupting the shadow clone. I'm sorry? He said, eyes wide. You're planning to take on Gato Corporation? Did you miss the part where I said it was as powerful as some ninja villages? The entire membership of the council looked back and forth at each other, then nodded. I've been oppressed enough that I won't let others be so, not if I can do anything about it, the original Naruto said, and you could hear the finality in his words. The Chunin teacher fell back into his seat. It's much too dangerous. You'll be killed. He won't be there, Nico countered. The boss has to stay here to keep the masquerade up. We clones are the ones who'll be taking on this mission. There were nods all around the table. And it's not like we won't be making any profit out of this. Irika signaled him to continue. Right now, everything the trading network has done has been based out of Konoha, right here. He explained. However, the farther we get from Fire Country, the less useful this becomes. The network has been for a new place to base itself out of, but hasn't met much luck until now. Nico stopped to take a breath. For operations in the east, Wave is perfect. It's right between fire and water, and is very close to the main shipping lines in the area. Once Gato is out of Wave, there would be no competition against us, and some of the natural products of the island are sure to sell well. Irika nodded in confirmation. Wave Island tobacco is well known to be the best in the elemental countries, and there are numerous plants used in the fabrication of medicine that are originating from there. The teacher then sighed. I'm not happy about this, but I'll listen. What is your plan then? Well, Nico said. Here's what we came up with. First, we'll need to have Prank Day 53. Now that the Wave Group had better knowledge of the island, sneaking back in was quite easy. The half-completed bridge was well into Kawamiri distance for jumping, and it didn't take long before Nico was back with the rest of the team. Welcome back, the Kage Bunshin known as Shiro said. The clone nodded, then looked around. Only a dozen of us? He asked. We have more than 4 times that. The rest are out exploring, as per the plan. Any news? Nico asked. Not much yet. The only thing we found is a village completely emptied on the southern end of the island. The leading clone's face became hard as he said this. You mean everybody killed? Shiro shook his head. No, it doesn't look like the case. A few corpses, but not enough to account for the entire population. Slave trading, then, Nico said grimly, and Shiro nodded in confirmation. That was one of the reasons the clone group in Wave was exploring. The main question the council had was why Wave? Compared to other places, Wave was close enough from the continent that people could, with difficulty, make their way there. Multiple ideas had been bandied about, especially by Irika, but nothing certain. Seems so, Shiro said. You have the equipment? Of course, Nico replied, withdrawing a number of scrolls from his backpack. One of the issues with Kage Bunshins was weapons. While they were copied like anything else a ninja owned, they were unfortunately as susceptible to damage as a shadow clone, and damage could burst both weapon and holder at the same time. As such, the real Naruto had arranged for a large number of different weapons to be transported by Nico to Wave, to be used in the fighting. Here, Nico said, handing a dozen storage scrolls over. He then went back inside his backpack and got out a heavy pile of papers. And a few hundred tags. Shiro's eyes went wide. That many? I didn't even know we owned that much. We didn't, Nico replied. This is Irika's contribution to the plan. As Naruto wasn't even a genin yet, he wasn't allowed to buy equipment such as tags and storage scrolls. For the scrolls, he currently had enough remaining, but the tags were a different matter. Irika, however, as a chunin, wasn't so restrained, and had gone and bought enough for the planned mission, with some excess. Nice, Shiro said. We'll need to thank him once this is done. This'll make things a lot easier. He waved. Come on. Let's go store these. The pair did a number of specific jumps, disappearing in the forest that was inner wave country. With all the experience the jumpers were getting at the Kawamiri, aiming for specific but distant places was easier by the day. The two of them ended up at a cabin in the woods. That's the main base? Nico asked. Don't be fooled. It's got a basement that's much bigger than its ground floor, Shiro answered, leading him down a ladder to said basement. It had nothing on the Uruhara training grounds, of course, but it was still large enough for the dozen clones that had followed the pair to base. So, show me where we're at, Nico said. Shiro drew his copy in front of a map. Well, he started. Prank Day 56. Kokiai, the male clone infiltrating the civilian academy, forced himself not to yawn. In front of the class, the female teacher was explaining the rise of the family of the current fire daimyo and the fall of the previous one. It was boring as hell. As a copy of Naruto, he understood why the original had decided to infiltrate the civilian academy, and even agreed with what could be learnt there. It didn't mean, however, that he found the work interesting or anything. What he did notice, though, were the difference between the ninja curriculum and the civilian one. Some of them were evident, like the lack of ninjutsu, weapon classes and taijutsu, but even the classes both institutions had in common had major differences. Ninja history was about war, plain and simple. The clan wars predating the ninja villages and their resolutions, followed by what led to the great shinobi wars and how those ended. There were some parts about specific people and what they did, but that always went back to war in the end. Civilian history was about people, on the other hand. How this person found out this technique, or that place, how a group of 3 explorers created a village which became a major trade center. It rarely touched wars at all, and shinobi even less. Over the past week since the 2 clones had been present, the names of only 3 ninjas were spoken, and all of them were kages. Even in maths there was an acute difference. Ninja maths were all about speed, crunching numbers as fast as possible to get results. Fast and close enough was better than slow and exact. Not for civilian maths, though. Naruto had known what were decimals before the start of the prank from one of his maths books, but he couldn't remember ever having to use them. For civilians, however, they were everywhere, from money to time to weight. It was disturbing. Kokiai sighed softly, and turned toward his sister and fellow clone. The pair of them had split the subjects at school in 2 halves, and history was one of hers. He didn't know why she'd chosen such, true, but he was glad for it. He didn't think he'd have been able to take it. What he did do was raise his book so that it his whatever he was working on, and took out his calligraphy homework. That was one of his subjects, and he thought it might help him learn seals in the future. So he took out brush and ink and started writing. He didn't have the best calligraphy, something that Iruka had long complained about, so he'd at least be better at that. The fact that it helped pass the time was the main reason for it, however. Prank Day 58. The 2 Naruto clones had never been in a restaurant this fancy. They were pretty sure that there wasn't a Naruto Bunshin in existence that had been, at least not as a client. The pair of them were led inside by Tucci to a large table in a booth near the back of the restaurant, where 4 men and a woman were already waiting at a table made for 8. Lady, gentlemen, the ramen chef started. Allow me to introduce Jisei Ane and Jisei Junei, owner of the. He thought for a moment. Kuroneko, was it? Both the clones nodded. Kuroneko Trading Shop. I've been doing business with them for a few weeks, and I think you'll be interested by what they have to offer. He then turned to the clones. Around this table are fellow restaurateurs of Konoha. Ishicho Kaku, owner of the Yakinikuku restaurant, a dark-haired man in simple clothes, waved. Mibi Suji, of the Shushuya bar, a nod came from man with spiky brown hair dressed in a kimono. Sumida Tetsuya, cook at the Konoha Zazankyo, a dark-haired man with glasses, bowed formally. Sakura Daiseiji, who owns the Ryuri Ryujin. Good day, the heavy-set man answered. And our hostess, Kaiseki Koju. Welcome to the Koju, Jisei-san, Jisei-san. She bowed to the 2 clones. The pleasure is all ours, they answered. Tucci looked around the table. Does anybody mind if we talk work before the food? Everyone shook their heads. Business before pleasure, always, Tetsuya intoned. Indeed, Tucci said, turning toward the copies. I suppose you have brought copies of your catalog? They had 4 copies between the two of them, which they handed on both sides of the table. I'm surprised such long-lived restaurants in Konoha are having an issue with supplies, Ane said to Tucci while the others were going over the catalogs. Janae had to agree. Koju's had a sign saying 50 years of Konoha history, and while the others weren't as old from his knowledge, Naruto had known about their existence since forever. Seiji and Suji looked at each other and sighed. The QB changed everything, Suji said. The Merchant Council works by election. A new member is voted by the remaining ones from Konoha merchants when someone holding a seat dies. The QB emptied half the seats, and it allowed a powerful block to form itself on the council. Most of us had links to 1 or 2 council members, but those were all among those lost. Since then, Kaku continued, joining the conversation. We've been having issues importing various foodstuff, spices, and the like. Anything that's not coming from Konoha and its surroundings, really. Seiji nodded. Caravans are lost, there are issues with the orders themselves, theft, perished items, he sighed. All sorts of reasons. I'm personally of the impression that some people are trying to soften us, weaken us, their hostess said. Trying to force us to sell our stores. I've been receiving 3 to 4 offers for my restaurant every year, and I know I'm not the only one. The men at the table, even Tucci, nodded. Janae stamped back on a surge of anger. Ichiraku ramen without Tucci wasn't something he wanted to contemplate. Prices are good, Tetsuya interrupted. I'll trust Ichiraku-san's word that delivery is prompt. There are, however, items that I am interested in that do not figure in your catalog. The catalog is only what we are sure to be able to supply, Janae replied. If there are other items you are interested in, please say so. As long as we have an idea of the price you'll pay and where it can be found, we'll do the best we can to get you the merchandise you ask for. We have contacts all over the continent, so go ahead and ask. Perfect, Seiji replied with a smile. The orders started coming out then, just as Koju started bringing drinks. More than half the items weren't on the catalog itself, but that simply meant the network had a way to improve. The meal afterwards was just as instructive. The various restaurateurs knew Konoha like the back of their hands, and were full of useful anecdotes and stories. Janae and Ane listened carefully, as there were plenty of hints and tips on how to run a business throughout. It didn't hurt that this was the best meal the pair had ever eaten, even including Ichiraku's ramen. Not that they would be saying so. That would be blasphemy. Prank Day 59. Where there had been less than 100 Naruto Bunshins in Wave 5 days ago, there were now more than 1,000. And they weren't stopping there. Already, the search had given good results. Gato was using a city on the side opposite to Fire Country as a port of call, and had as much mercenaries there that he had on the city near the bridge. Most of the cities on that side of the island were now ghost towns, empty to the last person. The clones had infiltrated the city, again as a missing nin. Sanrio was the one who had taken that job once more, only this time as a ninja from Wind Country, since rumors said that Gato had a number of shinobi from Kirigakure on his payroll. It wouldn't do to be found out by someone who knew Kuri ninjas better than they did. The base they used had also changed. While the cabin in the wood was still used as an outpost and storage depot for weapons, the command center for the missing had moved. The Naruto Bunshins were now based off a abandoned manor near the center of the island, which seemed to have been emptied by Gato's forces in the previous months. They'd put a good number of sentries to make sure Gato wasn't coming back, though. Incoming jumper! A clone yelled from his position on the roof. Another Naruto clone appeared right in the square set for arrivals. He ran straight inside and went right to Shiro, who was still leading this mission. We've got confirmation on Gato's shinobi forces, the jumper said as soon as he was in the same room as the leading clone. 4 of them. Zabuza, Haku, Goza, and Meizu. One of the clone further back cringed. Ouch, he said. We've got heavy resistance right there. Shiro turned toward said clone, who was reaching for a book. What do you mean? Zabuza Momoichi the clone read from the bingo book. It was Earth's, and the most recent one they'd found. The Demon of the Hidden Mist. Ex-member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Ex-Anbiyu, master of silent killing. Still owns and uses Kubikuri Bocho, his sword. His eyes went wide. The bounty on his head is pretty big. Not an opponent we can take, can we? Shiro asked. Not without piles of luck, no. Shiro turned back toward the jumper. Good work. Go eat, then return to your position. We have to find out where he's based off. We can't attack until we know he won't interfere with us killing Gato. That wasn't something the Naruto clones were looking forward to, but leaving Gato alive wasn't an option. He'd proven he could do too much damage to be left living. It was even part of the Konoha shinobi education. Do not leave an enemy breathing at your back. Yash, the jumper said, turning to run to the kitchen where his ramen was waiting. So, everything else going according to plan? Nico said. He was still a jumper, and had gone down the Konoha Wave Road twice more since he'd returned from Konoha the first time. Food had been his main cargo both of those times. Not really, Shiro answered. Gato's out of the country, and nobody knows for how long. We still haven't found his main base since he doesn't live at the port, and there's a rumor that the bridge builder left for Konoha to recruit ninjas for protection. Nico had to admit that the pressure was clearly mounting. Extra Konoha ninja meant that they might have to remove most of their forces so they didn't interfere with an official Leaf mission. Incoming jumper. Said jumper didn't even wait to be inside. The Gato Corporation flagship just arrived in port, with the man on board. Shiro sighed in relief. Finally! Prank Day 62. Even with Gato on the island, it took 3 days before they were ready to strike. Days which included frantic searching for the missing ninja's lair, constant shadowing of Gato by clones, most of them in animal form, and the discovery of the man's base. Turns out slave trading wasn't the only pie Gato had his finger in. Deep in the forests of Wave, accessible only through a hidden path from one of the many rivers in the country, Gato had a plantation more than a dozen square kilometers wide, all of it growing black swamp poppies. The source of the most addictive drug currently on the market. The only reason the clone group had managed all of that is because Gato didn't trust the ninjas under his command. He saw them briefly, maybe once a day, and no more. The tycoon trusted his security detail to a group of mercenaries, ex-samurais by the look of them. Said fighters didn't pick up the fact that Gato was being spied on. The ninjas would have. While it didn't seem like Zabuza had spotted them, the same couldn't be said of the girl/boy under his command, Haku. She was incredibly perceptive, and the clones tracking them had a number of close calls where a clone had to dispel himself in hiding. The Naruto bunchins ended up having to watch the missing Nin from much farther away, just to avoid detection. A clone appeared right beside Shiro using Kawamiri. Everyone is in position. Like everyone present, he was dressed in this mission's camouflage suit, all black with gloves and a simple mask with 0 inscribed on the brow. Should anything go bad, the clones didn't want nothing linking them to Konoha. The shadow clone leader nodded. Missing Nins? Zabuza has been spotted in their base, and Haku is a constant presence at the windows. I think he picked up something. Nothing else needed to be said, as Gozu and Meizu had been seen leaving the island 2 days ago, and hadn't been spotted since. That's probably the best we can get, Shiro said, nodding. He then looked at the jumper straight in the eyes. The mission is Geo, Code Amber. Good hunting, everyone. The jumper nodded, taking his kunai and dispelling himself in one move. Shiro's whole team surged forward and the leader had to catch up for a moment. Then they burst from the trees into the plantation, all the teams in perfect synchronization. You couldn't beat shadow clone messaging for timing. The picket guards didn't even have time to scream before the swarm was upon them. The guard before Shiro's team took a dozen mixed kunai and shuriken near instantly, and fell with a wet sound. Go, go, go! Shiro said intently, pointing toward one of the many buildings that served as barracks for the many swords for hire Gato has under his command. The bloody part of the day had started. Barreling through a closed windows, the clone with the very imaginative name of Kunanigo thanked all the training the clones had done on the chakra shield. Neither the impact nor the cutting bits of glass touched him, and he was inside. The sound woke all the mercenaries sleeping, but not fast enough. By the time the first warrior was up and armed, the clone had put a kunai and 6 different mercenaries trying to get out of bed. Only 2 had died, but all of them were now incapacitated enough that they wouldn't be causing problems for the moment. Q sidestepped the overhand swing of the swordsman, falling instinctively in the first stance of the sharp fist. His arm automatically came up, parallel to the blade, and he immobilized it instant, reaching for a kunai with his other hand. The mercenary was faster, drawing his tanto and slicing open the clone's belly. Q turned to smoke instantly. His death wasn't in vain, as the copy who had followed him in put a shuriken straight in the mercenary's eyeball while he was wondering what happened. The 4 other clones finished up everyone else in the room. There were unfortunately many more to go yet. Gato's bedroom was on the 3rd and top floor of his mansion, as if that made him more secure. It didn't one bit. By now, the many Naruto clones were well versed in the tree-walking technique that Kuratori had taught Miramaro more than 2 weeks ago. 2 complete clone units, which meant 32 clones, hit the walls running and climbed them straight up. The sentinels on the roof, 2 sleeping swordsmen, with 4 more playing a card game, never saw them coming, and were down before any could raise a blade. Then they went back down to Gato's window. Said window was locked, true, but that didn't mean anything to the boy who was still Konoha's best prankster. It wasn't sealed shut, so it took around a minute before a clone had it open, and the teams filled inside. Gato's bed was large enough for 4 people, and for good reason since there were 4 people inside. Gato was clearly enjoying the fruits of his own enterprise, as he had 3 women along with him in his bed. And 2 of them seemed quite young to be in such a place. Team 1, the leader of this part of the mission, signed in what they called bunny language. Clean house, kill guards, capture others? 16 nods answered him as that group moved out of the room. The leader then pointed to 6 clones. Girls, take other room. No talk. More nods. Rest, gag, tie target. The masks hid everyone's face, but he could feel the smiles. As one could see, the language was still a work in progress. It didn't take 5 minutes before they had Gato tied up tighter than a sausage. They'd even given him a modesty sheet, though that was more for their own mental health than anything. He was then brought outside by a single bunshin while the rest started dismantling the man's office. Everything fine? The clone leading Gato asked Shiro as he reached him, standing in the middle of the fields. We have a dozens or so escapees, but nothing totally unexpected, Shiro replied. That's the man? The clone nodded. No reason to leave him alive now, Shiro said, withdrawing his sword, one of weapons which had come from Konoha. The group as a whole had discussed the possibility of torturing Gato, but realized they didn't have the stomach for it. A clean death or a death in combat was better. There were many clones who, as soon as the fighting was done, had gone to secluded spots and vomited what little they could. Shiro would do the same later, once everything was done. He was the leader, he had to hold it back now. Miyamoto had been training them in the sword for more than a month by now. They weren't anywhere close to proficient in kenjutsu yet, but cutting of the head of someone immobile with a single stroke was well within their abilities, given a minute to prepare. Gato's head rolled off his shoulders and fell to the ground, his body following a second later. This ended up being Shiro's only kill that day. Seal the head, the leading bunshin ordered, and have someone bring to Kakawada and add it to the collection. That was the settlement in wave closest to Fire Country, where the bridge was being built. Gato had a place there where he displayed the heads and bodies of the people opposing him. His own would be a crowning masterpiece of that collection. His body goes in one of the mass graves. The rest of you, pick up everything here that's worth something or is useful. We're burning the place once we're gone. He wasn't going to leave that much poppies for anybody to find. It was another half hour before Gato's safe was found, and 2 more before careful use of fire chakra melted it open. Shiro took the money there and, after a look at Gato's ledgers, sealed a large part of the money in a scroll, which was given to a specific courier. The non-monetary items found, Gato's hanko, bank keys and the like, were given to Nico, who made 6 clones and was on his way out of the country. It would take 15 days, but the rest of Gato's holdings and fortune would fall in the hands of the Naruto group. But now, there was one last thing to do before the day was done. Incoming, Haku said. Zabuza, ever a light sleeper, rose straight from his bed. Haku had been expecting something this whole day, if not this whole week. There was something at the edge of his senses that was making him nervous. He'd wanted to investigate, but his master had forbidden him to do so. Zabuza was expecting Gato to turn on him, and it wouldn't do for Haku to spring a trap. A knock came on the door. Haku opened it while Zabuza returned Kubikuri Bocho to its place on the man's back. There was what was visibly a ninja on the other side of the door, clad all in black with a blank white face mask. The character 40 was the only clue to the man's identity. Coming to see someone like me at 2 in the morning ain't conducive to continued good health, you know, Zabuza said, looking down at the ninja. The man bowed. I am sorry, but there have been developments I believe who should be made aware of. You got a name? You may call me Ray, the ninja said. And I am here to inform you of Gato's death, 3 hours previous. Zabuza scowled and his hand grabbed the pommel of the blade hanging over his shoulder. That ain't something I like hearing. Anything else I should know before gutting you like a fish? Haku had been focused all this time on the man. There was something bizarre about his chakra, and how it a clone. Haku quickly signed this to his master. Zabuza's scowl grew harder for a moment. There ain't even any blood for my sword, he spat. Haku could tell the clone smirked, even with the mask. Indeed, a clone. You are the first to notice. I see your reputation is well deserved. Get to the point, Zabuza replied. Ray withdrew a scroll. I have here the payment promised to you by Gato at the beginning of your contract. And what will I have to do to get it, if I don't plunder from your corpse? Nothing, Ray answered, handing Zabuza the scroll. He tossed it to Haku, signing verify with his other hand. The Icenin did so, falling back deeper in the building. He released the money and counted it quickly, and it was exact to the Rio. He sealed it then once more. Money is good, Zabuza-sama. The tension in the room lowered. Why all this? Zabuza asked. Ray bowed again. The group I am part of would like to ensure good relations, simply. We may very well in the future require someone of your skill, and being fair is simply good business. You want a way to reach me, then, Zabuza replied. That would be perfect. The ex-Kyrie thought for a minute, then gave the location of one of the dead drops Haku knew about, far away in grass country. The ninja noted all the details, nodded and said pleasure doing business with you. He then walked out in the forest, and was gone from his senses the next second. Pack your bags, Haku, Zabuza ordered, already doing the same. We're out of the country tonight. We grab the brothers and we go straight to water. The self-proclaimed tool nodded, grabbing his own equipment. It was only minutes later that he realized all the pressure at the edge of his awareness was gone. Prank Day 63. Iruka was glad to notice the sign that there was a meeting of those in the know tonight. Ever since the news from Wave had first come in, he'd stressed about what could happen. Last Sunday was even worse. He worked at the mission office on the weekends, and there was a C-rank mission to accompany Tazuna, whose name he recognized from the Naruto meeting, back to Wave. The Hokage personally handed said mission to Kurenai's teammate. While the woman was a talented jonin, the mission was said to be C-rank, which meant no expected contact with enemy ninjas. He'd nearly broken his promise to Naruto at that exact moment, just to give a warning. Only the fact that Naruto had said everything would be finished in the next few days stopped him from doing so. By now, navigating the Uruhara tunnels as they were called was second nature, at least from either his home or the academy. He arrived around the same time as everyone else, taking his seat opposite the real Naruto and his partner Ichibo. So, big news. The real Uzumaki said as soon as everyone was in their place. Nico's back with news of the Wave mission, and everything went fine. Iruka released the breath he'd been holding. Thank God, he said. So, Gato's done? Dead and buried, Nico replied. We left only his head and put it with the ones of his opponents on display. Iruka had to agree that was poetic justice right there. We looted everything we could from his businesses, burning the drugs and releasing the slaves. We are currently up 5.5 in Rio, and we haven't gotten to everything yet. Millions? That isn't much for a company like that, Iruka replied. Billions, actually, Nico continued. The man had a lot of money squirreled away all over the place. The main reason I'm in Konoha was to empty the accounts the man had here. Iruka's eyes went wide. I almost forgot. Here, Naruto handed Iruka a scroll. The money you gave us for the prank. After the casino trick we found, we didn't need it anymore. Casino trick? It seems we Narutos have huge luck at anything that's a game of chance, another Naruto, not the original, explained. The clones we have in Tanzakagai have been slowly but surely building up funds, especially for the trading network. With the payout of Gato's death, we're pretty much set for anything that comes. Iruka nodded blankly, crumbling in his chair. And the ninjas in Wave? That's the main thing he had been afraid of. They weren't really an issue, Nico pointed out. Gato didn't trust them, so we had no issue with the attack. We dealt with them afterwards, though. Didn't want to have them hanging around. They were out of the country last time they were sighted. The clones smiled. Zabuza might have been gruff, but he played fair at the very least. Iruka was happy that he hadn't been drinking anything, as he'd have sprayed it all over the table. Momoichi Zabuza, he said, eyes wide. The demon of the mist? And you met him? Not me personally, Nico answered. But another clone, yes. He's rough around the edges, but he plays it straight. Best of all, we have a way to contact him in case we need some superior firepower. The many clones at the table nodded, while Iruka just stood there stunned. He'd never have agreed to the Wave mission had he known about Zabuza's presence. The man was known to snack on missed ANBU teams. He'd have gone through the many shadow clones like a knife through butter. The meeting went on, discussing merchant teams and training. Iruka barely paid attention, still mentally stuck on the close call they'd gotten. Naruto couldn't help but show some surprise, even though he tried to clamp on it. Had he seen something? Was there some detail he'd not paid enough attention to? Did his time as Miramara close to the man give him some sort of hint? Empty your pockets, the teacher cried out. Naruto did so, thanking the fact that he currently had nothing incriminating on himself. Still, the Chunin had him remove everything, even the contents of his hidden pockets. Kiritori scowled but handed all of it back to him. The teacher then looked straight down at him. I know you by now. You're too calm not to be planning something. You won't get me this time. He pointed at his two eyes. You won't escape my sight. With a flash of insight, Naruto understood what this was about. After Kiritori's revelations at the memorial stone, he'd stopped pranking the man. It would be like hitting someone who was down, and it felt wrong to him. He'd said it to Iruka at the beginning of the prank, he'd only prank the ones who deserved it. And Kiritori didn't, not anymore. Still, he need to explain that somehow. It's not what you think, Naruto quickly replied. If anything, Kiritori's scowl got harsher. Do tell. Well, Naruto said, building the story in his head. Muramaru, he caught me doing something. And he clearly wasn't happy about what he was seeing. We argued about it. I thought he should be on my side, 'cause we were both orphans, you see. That started an argument about family. I don't think he really wanted to say it, but the story of your family came out, sensei. Naruto had to force himself not to talk as Muramaru did, and bowed his head. I'm sorry. The look of the Chunin's face was well past the scowl level by now. You know nothing about it, he spat. I know better than you think, the blonde replied. He couldn't help but look down at his stomach, where the seal resided. Useless thing had been nothing but trouble his whole life. Kiritori's eyes went wide. You know about the K he started, only to stop as Naruto made the universal sign for silence. The Chunin then looked all around to make sure no one had overheard, and by the time his eyes fell once again on Naruto, he was fully serious. Who told you that? The teacher asked, his voice clearly under tight control. Your predecessor, Naruto answered. The man told me, trying to turn me against the village. He made a slight smile. I punched his lights out. You still know nothing about my pain, Kiritori growled out. Nothing? Naruto replied. He couldn't help but start getting angry. Kiritori was by now one of his precious people, with all the help and training he gave Muramaru, and hearing him say that hurt beyond measure. Nothing? You're the one who knows nothing. You've had a father and a mother, brothers and sisters, even a wife and sons. You can remember their faces and their voices, you know their names and their stories. I'm sorry it was clear who Naruto meant, took them, but don't tell me I don't know loneliness. You. He spat that word. You at least knew them. I didn't even get that. This time, Naruto didn't shy from looking at Kiritori straight in the eyes. He took them from me just as he did to you. I didn't have a father to teach me how to read and tell me stories. I didn't have a mother to cook me good meals and bandage my wounds. Hell, I don't know if I was an only child, or if I had brothers and sisters before he came. By now Naruto was glaring. I don't even have their name, Uzumaki is honorary, after some village I know barely anything about. You never had to stand in the corner alone, while everyone else was having fun. You never had to face the glares and the words and the rocks they sometimes threw. He couldn't stop, not now. You never had to spend your birthday in hiding, because they might hurt you if they found you. You think you know loneliness? You know nothing. You only know loss. Well, sorry that you actually had something to lose. Naruto spat, then sniffed. I'd have liked at least having that much. The blonde then saw Iruka, farther away in the corridor. He couldn't deal with him at the moment, not with the tears coming. Screw it, he swore as he turned. I didn't come here for insults like that. I'm outta here, he said as he pushed the doors open. If he had looked back, however, he might have been surprised at the look on Kuritori's face, and at the shame clearly visible there. Prank Day 66. Kurenai sighed as the coast of Wave Country came up. It seemed that her team had dodged the so-called C-rank curse, at least. Kurenai wasn't one to believe those kinds of superstitions generally, but her own first C-rank ended up involving the Hot Water Nobility, a renegade ninja clan, and a hidden chapter of the Church of Jashin. And worse was, she wasn't the only one. Most of her fellow Jonins had stories like that, somehow. Too much to be a coincidence. She'd still be careful anyhow. No enemies on the coast or in sight, Sensei, Hinata said, her Byakugan shutting down. Good to see that the security measures she'd drilled into her team were respected too. The female Jonin was surprised to see that the atmosphere in Wave was well, festive or jubilant would have been the description she'd have used. Rumors on the grapevine said that Wave was going through a bad economic period, with rampant poverty and famine, but that wasn't what she was seeing. There were people feasting and dancing in the streets, and when she asked a passerby, he said that this had already been going on for a few days. The island's inhabitants welcomed back Tazuna like an old friend, which was visibly not what the old man had been expecting, with claps on the back and promises to help the latter's bridge. The man was clearly surprised, and excused himself quickly to return home. It was there that the whole story came out. Tazuna had hired a genin team as protection from Gato, the shipping magnate having hold of the region. Only, the word was that Gato had done something to get ninjas after him. Official word was of a hidden spirit village, whatever that was, and the man's head was found without the rest of his body 3 days ago. There were some issues with Gato's hired thugs in town, but one of the villagers made a deal with a mercenary company here in Wave looking for work. That group, the Torisan, made sure Gato's former swords for hire kept to themselves and obeyed the law. There had been only a single death, a thug who tried taking liberties with someone's daughter. Whatever happened then, the rest were staying calm. Kurenai saw a few of their members patrolling. Clearly samurai, especially in the way they walked. The top knot was also a big clue. Hinata said they had strong chakra networks, which might have indicated some former ninja training, but no self-respecting ninja would wear bright orange and red like these guys did. She stayed in town with her genin until the construction was finally complete as their contract stated, then left using said bridge. By then, the celebrations were mostly done. The bridge ended up being named the Great Freedom Bridge, in honor of Wave's recent liberation. Seeing her team walk to Konoha healthy and unharmed made her finally start to relax. She felt silly to have ever believed a superstition like that. Prank Day 68. Uzumaki-san, can I see you for a moment? Kuritori asked as soon as Naruto entered the academy. Naruto had been afraid of that. This was the first day he was in since he'd ranted to the man, and he had to say he was afraid of his reaction. Still, he had to face the music. Sure. My office, please, the teacher indicated with a hand. Look, about that rant Naruto started as soon as the two were alone in the man's office, only to receive the hand sign for stopping. The teacher then bowed. You have nothing to say, Uzumaki-san. It is I who must make excuses, Kuritori intoned, voice clear and serious. I have shamed my family by both actions and words, and restitution must be done. You were correct in your argument. You have lost as much if not more than I did, and by ignoring your losses I have dishonored mine. You have my most sincere apologies for this deplorable conduct of mine. Please accept the regrets of an old man who should have known better. Naruto didn't know what to say. Well, it's in the past, right? He said with a smile. The future's more important, don't you think? Indeed it is, Kuratori answered as he rose from his bow, the ghost of a smile on his lips. This was the most he'd seen on the man, except when training as Muramaru. You are most wise for your age. Oi! The blonde replied. You can stop with the polite talk, you know. I feel like I'm doing something wrong when you talk to like that. Yup, definitely a smile. I will try. Now, I won't be holding you back from your classes. I will see you later today in weapon class. See you then, Naruto said, opening the office door. And thank you, Kuratori added softly as Naruto walked out. 'Twas nothing, the blonde replied as the door closed behind him. That day's weapon throwing lesson was the most productive Naruto ever had. Prank Day 71. After more than 80 days to train, the Naruto Council finally declared the jutsu competition closed, and the groups had to present their results. The last place members were already known. The Earth Ninjutsu team had tried everything, but they'd made no progress in months. They took their defeat in good grace, knowing they'd been out from the running from the start. The Wind group went next. A trio of clones stood in the zone delimited for testing, backs together, and started a spiraling wind around them, coming from the ground. It took barely a minute, but by that time the spiral had grown into a tornado with the 3 clones as the eye. It was clearly powerful, as all the clones could feel the pull from where they were standing, dozens of meters away. The funnel was carrying an enormous mass of sand and stone, which was grinding both floor and ceiling. One of the bunchins inside the eye had even released a kunai trailing paper, so that everyone might see how fast the wind was turning. It was basically a blur. Then they started moving. Slowly, but moving nonetheless. All the bunchins watching clapped at the display. Sure, it wasn't mastered in any sense of the term, but the group had made great strides. The clapping did not stop when the wind calmed and the tornado vanished, barely a minute later. Good, the real Naruto said. I suppose it was originally meant for a single ninja to perform, right? The wind team nodded. How long can you make it last? Naruto asked. 8 minutes the record right now, with the average around 6.5, a member of the wind test responded. A few more weeks of work and we'll hit a consistent 10-minute mark. Perfect, the original said, turning to the still waiting teams. Next up. The lightning team ended up going next. Once again 3 clones stepped into the designated arena, one of them holding what the rest supposed were props. The clone in the middle stepped up. Well, our technique is from the Uruhara clan, and I'm pretty sure everyone here knows what that means. A chorus of nods answered him. Uruhara techniques tended to be deadly to the user, normally only useful as last resorts. So finding a way to show our results was difficult. Anyway, here it is. He then nodded to the 2 copies beside him, and got out of the way. The clone holding the bag withdrew from its depths a length of wire with lights every few inches, and in a single move extended it upwards while holding down both ends. The other quickly ran through hand signs. Right-un, Saishu Hoden, he yelled, grabbing both ends of the cable. There was an intense flash of light which barely lasted a second, then the sound of glass breaking as the lamps overloaded near instantly. The bunchin performing the technique was Smoke, and the other had dropped the line and was blowing on his hand as if to cool them down. The cable fell on the ground an instant later, now a bubbling mess of plastic and metal. The clapping was much less present this time. The real blonde looked around at the other members of his council, who nodded. It works, that can't be denied. He had to agree though that the presentation could have been better, even if he had no clue how that could be achieved. It was something of a letdown after the wind team's tornado. The water team, who came afterwards, wasn't a much better show. They did show the technique against a wave of thrown weapons, which was good, but not much more than that. The clone performing the technique blew all the weapons away with a single casting, but was gone as soon as the burst of water settled to the ground. He hadn't even been touched. Is that normal? Ichibo asked from his spot on Naruto's head. Not from what we read of the technique, no, but that's the result we've always had, one of the members of the water group answered. We can make the technique work, true, but we haven't found how to limit how much chakra it takes. And it takes everything. Can you show us again? The clone incarnating Ariko asked. Another clone performed the technique, this time aiming straight up. Naruto had to say the sheer mass of water was impressive. The jutsu created more than 10 times the mass of a clone in liquid. But again, the bunshin was gone afterwards. Last team! Naruto shouted. A pair of clones shot over the crowd to land in the testing zone, one from each side. The first was a mirror image of the only picture the Naruto clones had of a Uruhara. White blonde hair going past the ears, striped hat with a Konoha headband on it, black kimono and geta. The other, while not impersonating a specific person, was clearly an Uchiha. He had the fan symbol, the effeminate face, the black hair tied in the back and Sasuke's patented scowl. The fake Uchiha then blew a stream of fire at his foe. The Uruhara didn't shy away, making hand seals with precision. Katan Akaraka Jigoki. Before his then extended hand appeared a black ball a feet wide, and a second later the flames vanished, sucked into the sphere. But they weren't done. The pair started what was visibly a scripted battle, but still impressive. With a background of cheers and clapping, the two transformed shinobi dodged and attacked. The Uchiha mainly used fireballs, shuriken and kunai, along with trying to take the battle to melee range. The Uruhara let nothing land. He evaded the projectiles, absorbed every fire attack coming his way, and even managed a Kawamiri along with the sphere when his enemy was too close. Then, once the Uruhara had manipulated the fake Uchiha into position, he tossed the sphere right into the flames his opponent was shooting. They were collected like all the others had been. Unable to dodge, the Uchiha tried to block the coming ball. The moment he was touched, the sphere vanished, releasing an enormous bloom of flame. The Uruhara had to do a Kawamiri to save himself as his position was overtaken by the burst of fire. The flame lasted but a single moment, but the heat remained. The stone floor was melted in a great circle 20 meters wide, and the water the previous team had generated had vanished into steam. The Uruhara came back, another sphere in hand. With it, he absorbed the heat remaining, and continued the presentation, along with two clones who joined him. They tossed each other spheres as if they were playing with balls like children, then formed a line and broke their balls purposely, this time releasing a stream of flame straight up. Then they bowed. The crowd went wild with cheers and clapping. Not only did they have the best presentation, but they clearly mastered their technique to a higher level than the others did. Even though he was pretty sure he didn't need to, the original looked at his fellow council members for approval. All he got were nods and thumbs up. "It is official!" he cried out. "The winners of the first clone jutsu competition are the fire team, with Katan, Akaraka Jigoki. Congratulations!" The cheering doubled as this was said, and much shaking of hands and back clapping ensued. The defeated teams took their losses with good grace, admitting they had been bested all the way. They joined in the merriment. It was only an hour later that the real Naruto managed to talk with a member of the group. "Good work," he said. "The victory was well deserved. How did you manage the last part, the streams of fire? There was nothing in the scrolls about that." "Controlled failure, that's how it's done," the bunshin answered. "You stop maintaining a portion of the sphere, while keeping the rest. The flame inside rushes out of the hole, but anything that gets close to the remains of the sphere gets reabsorbed, then shot out again. Makes for a more condensed or controlled burst. There's probably more forms we can make, but that's the only one we actually managed in time. Maybe in the future." Controlled failure, and Naruto said in his mind. That's something to think about. Prank Day 73. For the second time in a week, Naruto was intercepted by a teacher at the entrance of the academy. This time, however, it wasn't something he'd been afraid of. Iruka was there waiting for himself, and with quick hand signs he instructed the blonde to follow him. "So, what's up, sensei?" he asked as soon as they were alone. Iruka smiled. "Two things. First, did you look at the two other properties whose deeds I took from Shinobi Archival?" "Sure." "If you had to keep one, which one would you?" Naruto thought for a moment. "The Himitsu place, for sure." "Why not the Kaihotiki compound? It's certainly bigger." the Chunin asked. "It's too open, which would be a problem with all my clones," Naruto explained. "The Himitsu place is closer to Ariko's house, also." There was a moment of silence. "Why did you ask?" "I did tell you I would be using one of these places, right?" Naruto nodded. "Well, the class has an upcoming practical on stealth and trap evasion, so I thought that would be a perfect time to make use of the third deed." "Ah, again?" Naruto whined. They're boring. I think I could have done the last one blindfolded. Iruka was about to rebuke his charge, then thought about it. Naruto did have a perfect score the last time this exercise was done, and the time before also. He turned to the blonde. You think they're too easy? Hell yeah, I replied, then realized he swore. I mean, it's not even a challenge. Naruto was well known to have pranked even the Hokage and the ANBU various times, so after that Iruka could understand the academy course not being a challenge. Then he realized that he had here an opportunity to make this test better. Actually, Naruto, how about being on the other side of the test this time? Your trap-setting ability is among the highest in class, and I think some more practical experience would be just what you need. And that would fix a little of Naruto's complaints of always having to do the same exact classes over again. Really? Could I do some improvements to the course? Naruto replied, surprise evident in his voice. The smile that popped up when Iruka nodded was beaming. That would be great. Meet me there tonight at 8 then, and we'll go over it. Now to class. Bell rings in 2 minutes. Naruto nodded avidly and dashed out, while Iruka smiled internally. Would the rest of the class hate his guts after this? Probably. Would it make them better ninjas? Quite possibly. Would it be hilarious? Assuredly. Naruto was in front of the building at 8 sharp. So, how's it gonna be, sensei? Iruka smiled, and this particular example was quite a bit meaner than usual. I've thought about it some more and decided to give you free rein, with a couple of instructions. The teacher said. I'll be rating your work and adding it as extra credit for the general ninja knowledge final. Naruto deserved those points. Yes, 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 Naruto exclaimed. Now, what are the rules? Nothing lethal, nothing dangerous, the Chunin explained. We want them to learn from this. Blunted shuriken or kunai are basically the maximum allowed in terms of actual damage. The teacher raised a second finger. An increasing level of difficulty as one goes deeper, because we want to test how long they last before falling to a trap. Third finger. Clearly visible results, as we want them to realize what they did wrong. The Chunin thought for an instant. That's pretty much it. Now, do you need any specific equipment? When is the test going to be? Naruto asked. 3 days from now. Naruto smirked. How about I check things up today and bring you a list at the academy tomorrow? That will be fine, Iruka answered. Now, do you need me for anything? The blonde shook his head. No, I'll be starting right now. Iruka waved. I'll be waiting for the list then. Do good work. For sure. Being allowed to prank the entire class, with the teacher's approval? That deserved his best effort. He turned and went right in, while Iruka left toward his home. Prank Day 75. The katana the clone was holding clattered to the ground as it burst. Miyamoto shaked at his own blade, then turned toward the real Naruto who was waiting beside them, looking at the match. The rabbit sat Saiza. What mistake did your clone do this time? The academy student scratched the back of his head. Geez, I don't know. You just went straight to the offensive and punched right through. Footing, the samurai replied. I could easily see his feet were placed improperly. Had your clone's position been secure, he could have easily dodged my charge. As such, 1 hour of the 4th kata, with 20 clones. Ah man, Naruto said, but still generated the needed clones. They took position 2 hand spans from each other, and started doing the kata over and over. After a minute of such work, Miyamoto spoke again. Naruto, with me. The real boy stepped out from the group. Yes? Show me to those blades you have, the rabbit said. Naruto led him to the warehouse they used for weapons. There, on one of the walls, was every weapon they'd gotten their hands on, including most of those from Wave. The rest were in the hands of the Torisan as they pretended to be a mercenary group. Naruto, the rabbit explained. You are getting near the point where you will have to choose a specific weapon. While a good samurai can fight with any sword he ends up with, his personal weapon should be like another hand to him, an extension of his body. He should know instinctively how far it reaches and much it weighs, how it cuts the air and leaves its sheath. This familiarity can only happen after extensive training with only this single blade, he continued. I have an exercise in mind, but you need to choose your own sword first. Naruto looked around at the many swords on the wall. Some were prettier than other, some longer, but he found he couldn't make a choice. He had no knowledge of what made a sword better than another unless it was evident. Do you have any suggestions? Naruto finally asked. Like I know nothing really about swords. What would you recommend? Miyamoto nodded, then went to the wall and started examining the weapons there. Some he passed without a word, some he simply unsheathed, and the few others he actually took in hand and wielded. In the end, he brought 5 swords forward. These are the best amongst those you have. The 5 were clearly different. Any special characteristics? The rabbit placed the 5 on the ground. All of them are well made, of good steel, but like you saw there are differences. He indicated the first one. This is the longest, not a katana but a daito. It is heavier than I would personally prefer, something which increases cutting power but makes it more tiring to use. He pointed to the 2 next. These 2 are nearly identical, and I suspect from the same maker. Well balanced, not too light or too heavy. He went to the next. A beautifully made blade, and solid too. The pommel is longer than usual, which makes it easier to use with 2 hands. It does, however, change the balance of the sword. He then put his hand on the last. A very light blade, narrower than usual. Very fast, but much less effective against armor due to the lack of weight. He then looked straight at Naruto. At this point, it is your choice, based on your personal style. Each has its advantages and disadvantages. Naruto thought for a good moment, then reached for one of the 2 similar blades. This one, I think. It is a valid choice, Miyamoto replied. May I ask what prompted it? Naruto grabbed the blade beside it. You said these 2 are near identical, right? The rabbit nodded. Then, should something happen to this one, changing to the other wouldn't require too much time to master. Correct, and a valid point, Miyamoto said, nodding. Now let us return downstairs and continue your training. The 4th kata once more. What about that exercise you spoke about? Naruto asked. It will have to wait for a full day of training, the rabbit said with a slight smile. And we will need access to the forests around Konoha. Anything I should know? The boy asked. Miyamoto was silent for a moment. Just prepare yourself for much running and blocking. That didn't raise Naruto's hopes much. Prank Day 76. Today was a day that had been depressing for Naruto the past 3 years. Today was the start of the Chunin exam. The blonde couldn't help but think that, if things had been different, he would currently be participating. He could be showing everyone how awesome he was, and coming one step closer to his ultimate goal. And the fact that, this time, the exam was in Konoha didn't help. At least he had something to fall back on. Today was also the day Iruka was testing everyone in stealth and trap avoidance, and he'd be able to pit his talents against those of his classmates, albeit in a different way. Iruka stepped up beside him. Everything ready? He asked. The blonde nodded. All the traps are armed and the scrolls are in place. Only thing left is for me to get inside. Why is that? Someone will need to reset everything between each attempt, right? The teacher nodded. That'll be me. I would have thought some of your clones would already be inside managing that, Iruka replied. Naruto shook his head. Better not. I wouldn't want the fact that I can do clones to become public knowledge, not right now. Time to get in position, then Iruka said. Kiritori's on his way with the class right now. Hi, Captain. Naruto replied with a smile and a military salute. Then he disappeared inside the building. Welcome everyone, Iruka said, standing in front of the whole class, Kiritori beside him. Today is an exam day. Inside this building is a scroll like the one I'm holding right here. He indicated the scroll in his hand. With your name on it. You are to infiltrate this place silently, dodge the many traps inside, and return. You will be ranked, in order, in stealth, trap avoidance, and speed. Anyone has questions? Not this thing again. One of the students in the back whined, one of the returning ones. It's way too easy. General murmurs of agreement followed. I would be careful about not treating this course as the one from the previous year, Iruka said with a smirk. This time the traps have been designed and placed by a specialist. Those who aren't careful will fall prey to what's inside. Actually, based on the list he'd been given, they were going to be in for a rude shock. Even Irika had no clue how some of the things Naruto had requested were going to be used. Blunted kunai, shinobi wire, bells, firecrackers, they were expected. Paper, glue, paint and indelible ink were normal. But 8 dozen eggs? A specific brand of vegetable oil? Toothpicks and an ink stamp? The teacher didn't know what to expect with that. And those weren't everything. Yeah, right. Irika continued as if there had been no comment. Students waiting for their turns will be training under Kuratori's orders, and will come for their attempt when called. Afterwards, they will come see me for a review. There will be no telling other what to expect. Joden Ariko, you are first up. Irika wanted the ones who'd do best to go first, to keep the surprise as long as possible. It took a good 15 minutes before Ariko returned, and even she did not come back unmarked. There was a spot of paint, bright orange, of course, on her left shoulder, and her right hand was covered in ink. She didn't say much to Irika, only grumbling silently about false explosive tags, and that she would talk to her progenitor about this. Irika let it go, and sent her back to work with Kuratori. He sent Hyuga next, as he didn't want the 2 clones one directly after the other. With his bloodline talent, he would probably be the next best choice. He didn't do as well as Ariko had, and unlike her he'd clearly made enough noise to be detected due to the traps. Most evident on him was the word fail written in kanji on his brow, and like Ariko he had a hand covered in ink. He also was scratching himself profusely, probably due to itching powder. Irika forced himself not to laugh as he gave recommendations. Muramaru went next, and he clearly had a different plan. He rushed in and was back in less than 5 minutes, though covered in paint and the like. Irika had to give him a thumbs up at that. It was a good way of keeping the 2 clones different. He sent the returning Tatsujin Hiroshi next, and smiled at Naruto's success. The class was more than halfway done when Kuratori came up to Irika. This test seems more rigorous than the one I remember going through. Irika smirked. The trap specialist I hired is well known for being very creative in his designs. The taijutsu specialist had a look around. I do not seem to see Uzumaki-san here. Did he already pass and leave, or did he decide to skip this exam? With how dirty the students ended up after doing the exam, most ended up being sent home. None of the above, Irika said seriously. Naruto is currently doing makeup work instead of this particular test. His last notes on the subject implied he was better doing remedial work instead of redoing an exam he aced multiple times. Just now, another student came out. This one was fully orange, had feathers stuck to his head and was clanking due to a bucket stuck to his foot. He was also missing his other sandal. Indeed, Kuratori said. Very creative remedial work. The implied meaning was clear. I suppose you will be testing his efforts afterwards. Irika nodded. That is indeed the plan. Would you appreciate another opinion? The head teacher thought for a moment. Regardless of what he'd stumbled on more than a week ago, Kuratori was a consummate professional. He had also been on actual missions more often and for a longer period than he had. Higher-level missions, too. I would be honored, he answered. It was past 4 when the last student went through. None had come out unscathed, though Ariko and the last members to go through, which included the rest of her gang, tended toward longer times and less marks, being more careful after all the failures. All the students were then sent home, at least the few still present. Only then did Irika knock on the door. Come out, Naruto. The blonde appeared in less than a minute. So, how did I do? I'm sure the students will pay a lot more attention to trap detection in the future, Irika replied. Indeed, Kuratori added. I suspect the students will not forget this exam, and will be much more careful in their future careers. Now, we will be testing your work. Both of you? Naruto said, pointing. The 2 teachers nodded. Together? Irika shook his head. No, each in turn. Give me 2 minutes to reset everything, then one of you can go. Irika was the first, and after the 2 minutes had passed. As he had asked, the entrance hall and the first corridor only had the classic traps, tripwire, kunai launchers, even a pit trap somehow. Well hidden, sure, but nothing special. Any student who fell for one of those deserved to fail, as they'd been studying those types of traps since day 1. The tricky one started at the end of the second corridor. The first difficult trap Irika nearly missed. Naruto had sprayed ink the same color as the door handle on said piece of furniture. The Chunin had just sidestepped 3 traps and stopped an inch before getting caught. And then it got tougher. First trap that caught Irika was a simple step that did a slight clicking sound. The Chunin instantly jumped back, preparing himself for attack, but nothing came. He waited a minute, then rose again to start moving, only to find his sandals stuck to the floor, quick-drying glue having seeped from between the floorboards. He had to abandon them there. The Chunin suspected Naruto had hid the mission scroll downstairs, and the rising level of difficulty seemed to indicate he was right. He started getting more marks from close dodges and the like. By time he'd found the bookcase with the scroll, he'd had to catch a pair of eggs coming from both front and back simultaneously. He'd found the ink stamp with fail inscribed and had to block it, and had lost his socks to another glue trap, this one on the ceiling. By now, he was truly paranoid. He verified every inch of the room before even approaching the scroll, and found nothing. He checked the scroll from every angle and found nothing. Only then did he grab it, prepared for the worst. Nothing. Finally, he sighed and went back through the door, only to fall through a pit trap that hadn't been there before. Worse, there was itching dust at the bottom. Grumbling, Irika made his way out of the trap and out of the building, this time managing not to fall for everything else. Naruto came out 2 minutes later. "You can go now, Hyojin-sensei." The teacher nodded and went in. "So, how was it?" Naruto asked. "Beyond genin level, that's for sure," Irika replied, dousing the itching powder off his feet with the water jutsu. "I have no clue how some of these traps activated. Chakra triggers?" Naruto smiled. "Nope. I have no idea how to make those, and the Hyuga in the class would have noticed." "How did you do it then?" "Weight triggers, mainly," Naruto explained. At Irika's blank look, he continued. "Things made to hold under normal weight, but activate under sudden pressure." He then started writing a design in the earth. "Well, you're beyond me," Irika finally said. "I concur," Kuritori said, coming back out. "I cannot rate you, Uzumaki-san. You are clearly better than any Chunin I know in this branch of the ninja arts, and I know of no jonin specialized in traps that might be able to evaluate you. My recommendation would be to talk to the Hokage about this place, and let him decide who could rate your talents." He brought out a piece of paper. "Especially with those." "That's an explosive tag, and it's primed," Irika yelled. "He might not be a sensor, but even he could detect that." "No, it is not," Kuritori replied, while Naruto simply laughed. "It's just a chakra-charged piece of paper, nothing else." He then withdrew another paper from his pocket. "It's something I learned 2 years ago, I think, when I got my hand on a real explosive tag and tried copying it." He drew a circle in ink on the paper. "A simple circle, right?" Both teachers nodded. Naruto then pushed chakra into it. "The circle holds chakra well. Make it big enough or make enough of them, and it'll feel like a normal explosive tag." He then added random characters in the style of a tag. "Add the rest afterwards, and you have something that both looks and feels like a tag, and whose only danger is getting a paper cut." Irika couldn't resist anymore. He started laughing. "Wahahoho! And I made sure to pass as far away from those as possible, not noticing that was your plan all along." "Indeed," Kuritori added, and even he had a slight smile. "Most effective. Even I was fooled, and by something so simple." The taijutsu teacher looked around. "Now, if you don't mind, we'll discuss the students' scores another day. It is late, and the day has been long. I will see the both of you tomorrow." He then left. Naruto and Irika quickly did the same, the teacher directing his pupil toward Ichiraku Ramen. His work deserved a suitable reward. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as I did putting this epic what if together. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single twist in the story. Drop your thoughts, theories, or even wild ideas in the comments. I read every single one. And hey, if you're craving more awesome Naruto content, go check out the other videos on the channel. I've got plenty of heat waiting for you. Until next time, stay sharp, stay awesome, and remember, even a shadow clone needs love. Peace out.